Lovely. Right, folks, welcome back to episode, oh, blimey, I think this is 46, something like that. And we've got Sam Manicom back. How you doing, Sam?
Hey everybody, yeah, I'm really good, thank you, Bruce.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming back on. There was so many people have been saying, oh, when's Sam coming back on? When's Sam coming back on? They want a bit of positivity in their lives, so I think there's a lot of people looking forward to this, and I am too.
Oh, that's a real shame because I'm just full powered, ready to be totally negative about everything in the world because there's so much rubbish going on. We need to have a good wallow in it, don't we?
I know, you've had a right crap week.
Let's
crack on. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, how have you found it? I've found, I got to admit, like last year, I don't know, it was just, I just cracked on, really. It was pants, but you just crack on. This year, this lockdown, this last one, it feels like it's gone on for about 30 years. It's just dragged for me. How are you finding it?
You're not the only one that said that to me. Birgit and I have been shielding for over a year now because I had that wonderful kidney transplant. It just means that I'm on the high risk category, which of course means that Birgit's stuffed as well.
Yeah.
So it's been quite an interesting challenge, but we're blessed with the fact that she can work from home. And so can I. I mean, obviously very weird times and not doing what we're normally doing. But I think one of the advantages for us is that we're comfortable. We don't actually need an awful lot. So the first year has slipped by reasonably comfortably. But as you say, this second period is now beginning to grind a little bit. I think for a lot of us, there was actually an element of fun to lockdown and what's going to happen next, and there was the novelty value. How are we all going to cope, and what are the government going to tell us to do next, and then change their mind about, and all of that sort of stuff. But one thing that we've noticed is that a lot more people this last couple of months have been paying serious attention to giving each other space. And a lot more people are out and about wearing masks and things like that. Yeah. And it's been really good to see. And I think that's one of the reasons that's helped us to get to this stage. But hopefully things are going to open up with a bit more of smiling going on soon.
I know, and there's such a... Well, I definitely feel a much more positive vibe, a really nice, maybe because it's spring coming or a culmination of things, but there's a lot of excitement and people are like, right, starting to plan for things in the future now. We're going to go and do this and go and do that. And you're just like, please let this be it. And we're not going to have to go back into another one like 3 weeks after we get released. We shall see.
Spring is just like that, isn't it? Birgit and I sort of sneak out for walks around the back streets, and we're watching everybody's the spring flowers coming up in people's gardens, and the blossom on the trees, and the occasional day of blue sky. And it's just such a positive time of year, isn't it? It's the promise of things to come, and I think that affects everybody, except for the serious grumps, of course, because they're always going to find something wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. You always get them, don't you? It's weird. I've found obviously, my life is on social media, and I don't know if it's me just being in a certain frame of mind because of the whole situation at the moment, or if other people are feeling particularly argumentative and negative. Not other people, some people. You always get it online, but they're just, for me, they're just definitely seems to. The ones who are negative are really negative, and I'm just like, where's this come? There's always been that underlying, like the troll, but then I've noticed a couple of people who normally are quite positive. You can see, you're just having a bad day here. And I have been guilty because a few times I've snapped back. You should never read the comments. I always tell people don't read the comments, but I do, of course, because I want to stay in touch with people. I want to engage with folk. Somebody takes the time to leave a comment, I want to reply back to them if I can. But a few times I've snapped back, and then there's nothing worse than the next day you wake up and you get a reply from that person going, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it that way, I didn't mean to offend. And then you're like, yeah, I've plainly snapped and taken the wrong end of the stick here. So,
Bruce, can I just say something on this? Because I think that what you're talking about is really important. The first thing is that you're a human being like everybody else.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is affecting you like everybody else.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I totally respect what you do, because you do make the effort to reply and to talk to people. And social media runs the risk of becoming the opportunity for everybody to have a slanging match instead of carrying on conversations and making friends. And yes, of course, there should be some debate involved, but respectful debate is the way to go. And I've hated some of the stuff that I've seen, and I don't hate much of what goes on in this world, but some of the just the snide and nasty comments have been absolutely awful. And yeah, people say to me, don't respond to those either. But I think, well, look, if somebody's made that comment, then what do I do? Just hide the comment, or do I reply to it? And I have actually had one or two hate mails this year, and I've never had that before. And so it's been quite an interesting experience for me, is how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
Do I bounce back with something that's factual and to the point, or do I try and look at it from the other person's point of view and think, okay, well, what's suddenly gone pear-shaped in your life that means that you're going to be saying something like this in public? And there usually is something, isn't there? But you're right. We sometimes say things in the wrong way, don't we? They come out wrong. And social media is dangerous for that.
It is, because it's such an impersonal medium, isn't it? You know, it's not. I mean, even though we're not face to face here, we can see each other. We can see how I can understand how you mean something when you say it, and you can get the same from me. But when it's the written word, there's none of that, is there? It's entirely how you as the reader interpolate those words. And, you know, a lot of things can be taken at least two ways, if not a multitude of different ways. So I think it's quite dangerous just relying on social media as in the written context.
It is, but I mean, we can extrapolate this out sideways, can't we, to all of these companies that are saying, well, actually, we've proved that we don't need to pay rent on all these expensive buildings, and everybody can work from home. Yeah. But all of a sudden, you've got the situation where what might have been a 3-minute conversation face to face with somebody, even if it's calling them a complete and utter plonker for something that they've done, you can do that face to face. But try and do that in an email. It might take you half an hour to draft it, and then you're still going to get fallout because you haven't got it right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next, won't it? Definitely.
I think it's been great seeing how people have adapted, and you know, a lot of places are discovering, oh wow, yeah, you know, we can function and work from home, but we've got to be careful we don't lose the sort of one-on-one interaction. Just as humans, we need that. We definitely need that. That's the biggest thing I've found in lockdown. Same as I'm sure with everybody, most people out there. It's that human contact. It's you know, the meetups, the Overland event that we go to, and you know, just getting out there and going out on my bike and stopping at a cafe and chatting with somebody over a brews. I've missed that, and I can't wait just to have that back.
Humans are tribal animals, aren't they? We need that connection with other people. There are very, very few hermits. And well, they're unusual characters all doing it for a reason.
Have you met my dad? my dad really? Is that oh yeah, he's loved lockdown. Loved it. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, no, not at all. No, I feel exactly the same. I was talking to a friend online, of course, the other day, and we said, "What's it going to be like when we have to meet people face to face?"
Yeah.
My fear is that I'm going to talk too much. The other person's not going to get a word in edgeway because they're going to be so excited at seeing somebody.
I was very fortunate back at the start of December when the Canary Islands opened up. They opened up the travel corridor with the Canaries. So I jumped on that. I was supposed to take a group of lads away on a tour there earlier in the year, but we couldn't because of COVID. And then literally the night that they opened up the travel corridor, a couple of the lads jumped on the WhatsApp group and said, can we go? You know, any chance we'd be able to do this? So I messaged Joy and Martin at, bit of a plug, Canary Motorcycle Tours. And obviously they didn't even know. They were like, oh my God, we hadn't been told. So yes, absolutely, because their business was on its knees. So we managed to get out there for a week. And, literally day 3, the news came in that Canaries is now back off the travel corridor, which meant we'd then all have to go into quarantine for Christmas and all this. It was like, oh well. But that week of meeting up with, 6 lads from over here, and just, it wasn't normal by any stretch of the imagination, because you still had to wear your mask and you weren't allowed in groups of more than 4 at a table and all that sort of stuff. but just socialising with people again, it was like, oh, I've missed this. This is so good. So I think a lot of people will. Well, I'm going to say, I don't want to say go overboard, but I think a lot of people are going to be like, right, let's make the most of the freedom when it comes back, and let's just hope we don't spike figures and it all goes Pete Tong again. Anyway.
Well, I enjoyed watching your posts when you were over there, because you could see the grin factor in your sentences, and it was just such a nice share to see somebody out and, you know, with a bunch of tail wagging people having an absolute buzz. It was absolutely brilliant. But, you know, as far as the rush when everybody's allowed back out again, I'm sure you've seen the photographs of, 1,000 motorcyclists heading down a motorway somewhere and this sort of thing. Yeah. It's going to be very tempting for people, isn't it? But I think people have grown up a lot in this last year. There's a lot less cynicism. There's a lot less, oh, it's all rubbish, it's all a big hype, etc. There's a lot more realization because more people have been personally affected by it. Mm-hmm. And I think that most people will be careful. Of course, there will still be those people, but hopefully they'll be in a minority.
Absolutely. Right, enough of COVID. Shall we crack on with questions? Because last time we ran out of time, didn't we? So we'll have to try and make sure we don't this time.
Bruce, is this you telling me not to talk so much?
No, I am the guilty one in this as well. You know, I can waffle with the best of them, Sam. So
let's do it.
We've got, I think there's about equal amount of questions, Patreon, Facebook and Instagram. So start with Patreon as always, patreon.com/TeapotOne. First question, Matt Jordan. To both of you, if you could ride around the world with anyone you wanted, alive or dead, real or fictional, who would you choose and why?
Well, go on you first then.
Oh, blimey. I haven't thought about any of these. Right. Do you know? Because I don't yet.
Yes,
I'll need to have.
I do.
Right, over to you and I'll have a think.
All right, Matt, this is such a nice question. I've never been asked it before, so that's a real joy. But I hope you're not disappointed by me saying that, well, it has to be Birgit.
All right.
Well, I mean, for starters, she's got the ability to put up with me, and that takes real strength of character. Secondly, she's great fun to travel with, and she has a wicked sense of humour. She's also really courageous, and she's determined. And I think that set of characteristics are really important in a travel companion. But she's also very easygoing, and she's happy talking to strangers. And that fits in very nicely with what I like. She also doesn't take any bullshit from anybody. And that's very entertaining to watch sometimes. Yeah. We had an episode where we were crossing the border from Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And my goodness, she tore the customs, the immigration official off a strip, and nearly got us kicked out of the country before we were allowed in. But, she was actually right with what she was saying. But, of course, we were the strangers to the situation.
Yeah.
She also takes great photos. And she writes an excellent diary. And I think that those two things are really important out of a long journey. Because you're on intake overload, it's so easy to forget the small details that you can capture in photos and in your daily journal.
Yeah.
She has got a really strong streak of common sense. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps you traveling safely. That common sense, people say common sense is dead, in part because we live in such a virtual world. I don't think it is. I think as soon as you get out on the road, all of a sudden, that common sense starts getting tweaked and you wake up to it. That's one of the reasons why I say it takes me about 6 weeks to settle into a big journey, because that common sense needs to be sort of, watered by the road and brought back to life again.
Yeah.
Birgit can also be feisty. And I think that that's a really good thing. It's part of the determination and no BS side of things, but it can also lead to quite a few entertaining moments. She also has what I think is one of the strongest the strongest facets for a traveller, and that's curiosity. She wants to know why. If she sees something, it's not a case of, oh, that's interesting, and moving on. It's a case of, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that works, or I wonder why that became the way it is. And last but not least, she rides really well. And that just means that we don't have to think about each other when we're traveling, because we're just tucked in together and we make a nice unit. But Matt, if you're not allowing me to choose Birgit, I think I would probably choose somebody like Paddy Tyson. Now, many people know who Paddy is. He's an overlander. He's the author of a book called The Hunt for Puerto del Fraglioli, and just that title alone tells you that Paddy has got a sense of humor. And if you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if people haven't read it, then they should get it, because it's a lovely book. But Paddy's also the editor of Overland magazine. But all of the things that I've listed about Birgit, I know that Paddy has too. And I think that when you're choosing a travel companion, you've got to have so many things that are right, as well as things that are contrasting, because it's the contrasting things that bring more into your journey than the things that you would have necessarily focused on in the first place. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It makes me feel such a lesser human being to say this, Sam, but as you were talking, I was thinking, Captain Jack Sparrow. I'd quite like Captain Jack Sparrow to come with me from Pirates of the Caribbean. Thinking that'd be a giggle. And then I thought, no, you got to be realistic. And then you started talking about recording the journey, and Peter McKinnon popped into my head. Do you know who he is?
Yes, I do.
A YouTuber. And I just thought he'd make an awesome documentary about it, because my photography eye is terrible. And he's, so yeah, I think probably just somebody like that. I think I would quite like to have with me. But yeah, I feel very shallow having listened to your answer.
I told you, well, you know me, I talk a lot.
I want Jack Sparrow. Oh God, never mind.
Yeah,
Cheers for that, Matt.
I kind of get that, and I think he likes rum too, doesn't he? I'm partial to rum every now and then.
Yeah, it would be a good party, wouldn't it? You never quite know where you stood, though. That would be the thing.
That is for sure.
Next one, Brian McManus. Hi guys, a question to you both. How did we end up in a world that for years we can buy flavoured condoms, but dentists don't use flavoured gloves? It's a wasted opportunity. 1 to 10 flavours. Question 2, what part of the world that you haven't been to that you are craving to get to? Great to have you back again, Sam. So you can either answer the condom question or jump straight to question 2.
Oh, I've got to answer the condom question, haven't I? I can't let this one go by. Brian,
I wasn't expecting this with you.
Brian, I reckon you're obviously a complete nut, and that's brilliant. Good on you. Dentist gloves. I would like to have things like plain chocolate and milk chocolate and caramel and golden syrup and condensed milk. I'd like to have steak and kidney pie. I'd like to have mango from Kenya. I'd like to have everything of the tropical fruit variety except for durian from Malaysia.
Oh,
you know what durian's like, isn't it? I mean, it's like baby poo, isn't it? I couldn't imagine a dentist wanting to put that inside my mouth.
But I'm just thinking, if you've got all those not durian obviously, but if you've got like chocolate and caramel flavoured dentist gloves, do you not think that at some point you'd start like licking the finger or sucking the dentist finger? That would get a little bit freaky, I think.
It certainly would. It would be a real worry. And the other worry is how powerful the suction tool would have to be to cope with how much I was wanting to dribble.
You get some right freaky I know a few dentists and they're freaky enough as it is. Yeah. So the second part of his question from Brian, what part of the world haven't you been to that you would love to get to? Is there anywhere you've not been to, Sam?
Oh, there's absolutely loads. I've been on the road a long time, but I haven't been to that many countries. And the big trip was 55 countries, and over 8 years, well, I travel slowly, or I try and cover a lot of miles within the countries that I'm in, so that I've got a chance to learn about them. I've only been in Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary from Eastern Europe, and I would love to spend time in Eastern Europe. Slovenia is a country that's fascinated me. Poland is a country that I'd like to go to.
Yep.
And Poland's one of those countries that I would have liked to have done a before and after. So one from 20 years ago and another visit in these times. I think that would have been an absolutely fascinating thing to do. But I've long itched to ride up the east side of South America. That was something that there just wasn't time and money for on the big trip. So Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, and then up round or cut across through the Amazon. I would really like to do that. And the other place, the part of the world that I'd like to travel is, originally with the big trip, the idea was to travel down the west side of Africa, but everything went pear-shaped in Algeria. And so all of a sudden the borders closed there and nobody knew how long it was going to be before they were able to be open. So I ended up going down the east side. So the trip down the west side of Africa has never happened. And of course, I was born in the Congo. And one of the ideas for going there, doing the west side, was so that I could go back to where I was born and have a bit of a mooch round and see if my 10-year-old eyes had left me with some memories that were real.
What part of Congo were you born in?
The not so democratic Republic of Congo. On the eastern side, but my parents worked all over the Congo, and the last station that they were working on, my father ended up as being headmaster of a medical college. So he was where doctors and nurses were being trained, local doctors and nurses. And that was one of the things that they went out to do, to give a chance for local people to learn how to cope in the developing world, particularly as the Belgians weren't being particularly kind to them, let's put it this way.
Yeah. Africa is definitely somewhere I'd like to, well, I will go back to at some point and properly explore, because it was just, for me, I was just coming out of that sort of North Arab part of Africa and just starting to get into the Africa I imagined, the lush green, the faces get much darker. It's like proper Africa, what I expected it to be. And it's at that point my trip sort of ended in Africa. So I'd love to go back and really explore it. It's just so volatile, isn't it? It's one of those places where the morning's fine, and by lunchtime all hell's breaking loose.
Now that phrase "every day an adventure" applies firmly to Africa, doesn't it? Because
Absolutely.
You have no idea what's going to happen next, and things can snarl up and you're either stuffed or you've got a pre-prepared escape route, or the gods are with you and something fantastic happens and you find that escape route on the run. But it's a challenging continent. But you really hit the stoppers with where you ended up, because I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that particular point, I don't think.
I obviously have thought about this a lot, and I've spoken about it a lot with lots of different people, and I'm at that stage now where I think to myself, was it as bad as I remember? Was it, are my memories, my mind, like not playing tricks, but like directing my own movie, or was it actually like, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm a different person than I was then anyway, so I think I probably wouldn't be affected by certain things the way I was then. So I don't know. I will go back and give it another whack and see how we get one at some point.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. I mean, with all your experience, you'll be seeing those things through different eyes.
Yeah.
And travel teaches you to take an awful lot more on the chin, to be less fazed about certain things. And things that might once have been fearful, they turn into things that are full of curiosity factor, don't they? Well, why the hell is it like that? How on earth has it managed to get to this stage? And what's the dodge to get out of it? And those sorts of things. I mean, those things grow, don't they?
They do, yeah. And Africa is very much, I mean, there's a lot of places in the world like this, but Africa is very much the sort of place where if there's an issue, whatever that issue is, generally it can be sorted one way or another. It's just finding what is this person actually after here, and we can remedy it, and we can get an outcome we both want and move on. Yeah. Before, I was very much in my sort of Western world sort of mind. I think probably going down the west coast of Africa as the first part of the trip wasn't my greatest decision. Maybe.
Well, I remember us meeting before you headed off to do it. And at the time, I thought to myself, bloody hell, that's courageous.
Yeah. Just naive, Sam. Just naive. Naivety and stupidity.
Well, I think out of all of the continents, Africa's probably the most difficult to start off with. So that puts us both in the naive and stupid category.
Yeah, definitely. What were you saying earlier? Oh, Slovenia. Yeah, I had the opportunity to go there a couple of years ago, and tour around Slovenia and Croatia. Where else did we go? Oh yeah, it was a bit of Italy, a bit of Austria, but Slovenia was fantastic. I did a little bit of work with the Slovenian tourist board over there. I've still got to edit the video. They're trying to, obviously there's not much point in putting the video out at the moment when people can't travel there. So
No.
yeah, the time will come this year, I would imagine, when those series of vids will come out. But what an amazing place. Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. Great roads, lovely people.
Birgit and I rode through on the way to Bosnia. And it was literally just because our ambition was, we had a month. So the ambition was to get to Bosnia and spend a couple of weeks there. So we had a week to get to Bosnia and a week to get back. And that's far faster than we normally travel. But when we were riding through Slovenia, we were just sort of looking at each other and, wow, this is amazing. We've got to come back. And coming back through on the way home, we did a different route. And we're just blown away by the scenery. And also, it was the people. We found that in Bosnia, people were a lot slower to smile and a lot less spontaneous. And we decided that was a combination, A, of recent history, but also their history under Soviet influence, let's put it this way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, of course, I mean, it was Tito at the time, wasn't it? But anyway, we found the people in Slovenia, once you gave them a moment and you gave them a smile, we always had a grin back from people. And it was, I know this sounds awfully corny, but it was just like seeing the sun come out every time. And what a brilliant thing that is when you're traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. You see it time and time again, don't you, that you have all these, maybe not so much us as in those who have travelled, but certainly when you speak to people who perhaps haven't overland travelled, everyone's tends to be the same. You know, everyone's very wary of strangers and wary of particularly Eastern Bloc countries, and everyone's on the defensive, aren't they? Whereas I think once you've experienced that feeling of meeting total random strangers in their lands where you rely on them and you get nothing but sort of friendship and openness back from them once you make that effort. Like you said, greet them with a smile, and generally you'll be greeted back with that. And that does change it, doesn't it? That definitely does change your perceptions on people. And it's nice. I like it. You're not afraid of anyone anymore. And it's just a nice mindset to have.
It really, really is, and it's one of the most important things about travel, and it's one of the reasons that I live travel as a life, and spend my time sharing and encouraging, because I want as many people as possible to go out and learn these things and to experience them for themselves. There's too much fear factor going on in Western society, and the point is that most of it is complete and utter rubbish. It's there to sell newspapers and make the eight of the most wealthy people in the world even wealthier, whereas the rest of us get us living in fear. And I just think that's absolutely nuts. And what you say about the smile is so important, but it's also learning things like how to say, the courtesy of learning how to say hello, please, thank you, and goodbye. Even if you know nothing else when you go there, just those few words make so much difference, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, you see it in people's faces, don't they? That they appreciate the fact you've made the effort to engage in their language. Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing worse than I go to Spain a lot on the bikes, or used to go to Spain a lot on the bikes, and it makes me cringe when, I mean, it's Spanish. It's not exactly hard, is it? Sí, no, cerveza for beer. Just simple things, and people don't even make that effort. Generally, it's the Brits.
Yep,
but
I'm afraid it is.
Right, Brian, if I'm going to answer that question, what part of the world you haven't been to that you're craving to get to? Top of my list, Mongolia. Top of my list. It's somewhere I wanted to go on the original trip, couldn't get there, and I would love to go. When I'll do that, I've got no idea, but at some point I will.
Oh, I can absolutely see why you want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The scenery, just incredible, isn't it? And the fact that the culture is still as strong as it apparently is, in spite of the country being more open now. when you see photographs from other people who've travelled there, Simon and Lisa Thomas, for example, wow.
Yeah. I had David Snelling and Curtis Murphy on here a couple of podcasts ago. Back in 2008, they did Biking for Bernardos. So they literally just set off and did the Ewan and Charlie long way round route. But 22 years of age, had just passed their bike licenses, £5 tents, no maps, and they just headed off. And they went through Mongolia, and like David's ex-military and stuff. He'd come back from Afghan and just needed to get away, so they did this trip. And the both of them were saying that it's probably one of the few places in the world that at that point anyway was totally unspoilt. It was just, you can imagine that this is what this place has always looked like since it was sort of created. Yep. And I would just love to get back. I would love to go there and experience all that. Yeah, one day.
Mm-hmm. Dreams.
Next one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tony Hannum. Hi guys, hope you're both well. When you're planning on going these long trips, do you have problems getting insurance for the bike? Everyone always asks about insurance, don't they? And I think a few people, when they hear the answer, a few people are like, "What?" Well, I don't know about you, but there were places I went where you just didn't have insurance; just doesn't exist.
Yep.
Over to you.
No, there were places exactly like that. There were some places, I mean, at many of the borders, there's a shack of some sort. Yeah. And you look at it and you think, no, there's no way going to be an insurance agent in there. But yeah, there is. There's one man dressed very smartly behind a beat-up old wooden desk with almost nothing there except for maybe a filing cabinet and a telephone that may or may not work. And
some photocopies. Look.
Exactly. And you buy insurance for the country that you're rolling into, and you pay for it the length of your visa, and you might pay £5 or £10 for it. And in case of an accident, it's absolutely useless unless a police officer is there or another official, and they want to see your insurance paper, and then you're going to be darn glad that you've got it. Yep. It may not pay anything out to anybody, but if you haven't got it, then you're opening yourself up to all sorts of trouble, including significant bits of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just means you're going to pay a little bit less to the nice officer if you have that insurance. You can almost see their face go, "Oh, he's got it right. What else can I think of?" If
Tony's thinking about doing a big trip, then Horizons Unlimited is a really good resource, because people who've been in countries before, you can actually even find out where you go. And there are some places where you get to the border and you're told you've got to have insurance, but there's no insurance office. The insurance office is in the next town. So then it's a case of flagging down a lift in the back of a pickup truck, or paying out for a taxi and heading off to the nearest town, leaving your bike in the tender mercies of the officials at the border. Will it still be there with all of your belongings when you get back? But yeah, it's normal. So you just go off and do it. And I think that so long as you're sensible with doing something like that, your stuff's going to be there. We never had a problem with it. And we had some very funny stories that happened as a result. And that's, part of travel, isn't it? The funny stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I think certainly for those who have travelled, you appreciate how good a resource the hub is on Horizons. The hub, folks, if you're not aware, if you go to horizonsunlimited.com, there's a section called the hub, and that's like a forum. That's how it originally started, and it's basically grown into the world's leading knowledge base for anything to do with overland travel. Doesn't need to just be motorcycles, does it? If you're walking around the world, if you're cycling, if you're taking a truck, if you're driving, if you're going to take a unicycle around the world, there will be somebody on there who's done it or researched it. And the beauty with Horizons Unlimited is that, as Sam said, there's people out there right now traveling, and you'll generally find people who have just crossed that border or been there within the last month, maybe 2 months, and they'll have up-to-date information for you. It's fantastic, isn't it? And you get to meet other people who are maybe traveling the same place you are. So if you want to, if you've been on the road for a couple of weeks and you fancy a little bit of company, you can get on there and go, look, I'm going to be in, I don't know, let's just say Mogadishu in 3 weeks' time. Is anyone around? And you can meet up in the hostel, go for a beer. It was good. I did it in Russia. I met up with an Aussie chap, and it was great. Great times.
No, it's really good. I mean, back in 1992, there was nothing like this. And any information that you got was literally from another traveller who you might have met coming towards you, if you'd had your eyes on the street at the right moment. And of course, then, if you saw another motorcycle overlander, you never rode past each other. You always stopped and had a chin wag and a catch up and a cup of tea or whatever else it was. But now the spread of resources that Horizons Unlimited gives overlanders, absolutely fantastic. And the beauty of it is you're talking to kindred spirits. Absolutely. And that's just friends straight away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does, we've talked about it already in this, but it does change your mindset, doesn't it? It does change your attitude towards people. And when you meet somebody else who's doing it at the same time that you are, then, you know, as you said, straight away you have a connection, don't you? And it's nice to meet those people on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right, Tony, just get yourself on Horizons Unlimited, bud. You'll find out everything there. Next one, David Bucholtz. For you both, what is the worst meal you've had prepared for you on your trips? See, I've had this question before, and I genuinely, off the top of my head, can't think of anything that was minging, that I didn't enjoy the taste of. I just ate anything that was given to me. What about you?
This is one of the things that after you've been on the road, or for me, after I've been on the road for that 6-week period, my taste buds are far more receptive to things that aren't necessarily flavoured as I would expect at home.
Yeah.
There have been a few things over the years that I've had to swallow that haven't been quite so pleasant. First trip I did to Morocco, I ended up being invited into a family's house for dinner. This was way out in the middle of nowhere, and they'd killed a sheep, which to me was just absolutely gobsmacking. But then when the meal arrived, my plate had the 2 sheep's eyeballs on it.
Oh.
Laying there looking up at me.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't very, very easy because I'd read that this was considered to be the absolute honour, and I had to eat them. And
did you?
Yeah, I did. Well, there's no way I could refuse. No way.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't have done it, Sam. Couldn't have done it.
I had to work at it. And what made it worse was the outside is gristly and inside it popped.
Oh, I'm genuinely boking at the mere thought. I think I might throw up. Oh no.
There have been other things. I'm not a great fan of something called matoke, and this is I came across this first in Uganda. I don't know whether you've had plantains, but it's a cooking banana. And you can get them in this country, and they're absolutely delicious. And you buy them when they're like an oversized banana. But the best time to buy them is when they're actually black on the outside, because that means that they're soft inside. Well, matoke is green plantain that is steamed. And the first time I had it, it was done in the local way, in the local village. And they steam it inside banana leaves. And it's just this glutinous stodge. Well, it's a stomach filler. It's it's developing world country stomach filler. But it tasted to me like I was chewing nicotine, and it just was not a flavour that I enjoyed at all. You had a little bowl of sauce that went with it, so you would break off a chunk in your hand and roll it around, and then you just dip it in the sauce, and you would go from there. And that wasn't. That's never been one of my favourites. Cooked plantains, when they're at the black stage and you fry them, absolutely delicious. Mm-hmm. What else? This was something that I had in Indonesia that I didn't know what it was when I was eating it, which is a very, very good idea. I discovered after I'd finished that I'd just been eating dog testicle stew.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, another thing is... when you're off the beaten track in Thailand and you eat at a street stall, the Thai curry, blisteringly, mouth-burningly hot, and I could not taste a thing for about 2 days afterwards. And again, I was in a situation where I had to eat it because I was with a local person and it would have been rude not to. But
Yeah.
the tears were pouring down my face as I was trying to eat this. And there's something else from Thailand, Thai fish paste. Have you ever had that?
No, I've not. No.
Oh, it's rotten. It really is rotten fish, and it honks. It's terrible. But Thais love this flavour.
Yeah.
If you go to a Thai, then find, into their house, then take them a nice tube or jar of fish paste, and if it's a good quality one, they'll love you for it.
My one story about the food was going to be in Thailand, in that obviously they like stuff incredibly spicy, don't they? It's hot and spicy, and I remember going into a sort of cafe place, in order, like literally pointing, they had the menu but pictures, and just pointing, no idea what it was, but that'll do, I'll have that. And she looked and she said, "Falang, spicy, no spicy." So I was like, no spicy, please. So she said, "Okay." But you know what's coming, don't you? Because they go, "He doesn't want spicy, I'm going to give him the hottest stuff we have." Because she almost like hands over the bowl, and she's like looking at you like this, and just waiting. Everyone from the kitchen comes forward to watch the white guy eat what they've given him. So I took it, and I couldn't taste a thing. It just blew my head apart. Yeah. They had a whale of a time.
I'd never had anything that did something like that to me before. I'd had piri peppers in Africa and all of those sorts of things, but no, nothing like the Thai stuff. And mostly, I think you and I are kindred spirits on this. We'll try everything because it is part of travel, isn't it? And
not eyeballs, mate. I wouldn't eyeballs and testicles, not knowingly anyway.
But it is part of travel, isn't it?
It is. No, it is.
The local cuisine is one of the ways that you find out what the culture is about. What's prized in that country? What is considered to be something that, no, I wouldn't eat that. But might be something that we would eat.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. It's part of the challenge and the fun.
I think I've probably eaten some what I would think would be horrible things, but I just didn't, as you said, I didn't know what it was. So, I would just go to places and point, "I'll have that kind of thing," or they just bring you the local food, and I'd eat it, and not knowing what it was, fine.
Yep.
But I'm sure if I knew I'd just eaten shredded dog's testicles, I probably wouldn't be that happy with it. But you do what you do, don't you?
You do, and I wasn't that happy with it, but I did discover on that trip that dog in Indonesia in the smaller villages is treated the same way that we treat pigs.
Yeah.
And so the dog's running around and it's free rein, but it comes back. And if you live in the mountains, they tend to be fed mostly on vegetables. If you live down on the coast, then they're mostly fed on fish scraps, fish heads and things like that. But that affects the flavour of the meat. So in the mountains, it's very sweet, and it's actually quite nice to eat. I know there are going to you lovers that are hating me.
I know, yeah.
But
it's that thing, though, isn't it? It's the mindset you wouldn't dream of eating dog here, would you? But as you said, different cultures have different attitudes towards things.
Yeah.
Right, next one. Will Carroll. "Hi guys, well done Bruce, it's great to have Sam back." Cheers, Will. Question for both. Does the type of motorcycle you ride reflect your personality? Or does your personality reflect in your choice of motorcycle? I think it does, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think people ride much more aggressively when they're on a red motorcycle.
Do you? Have you seen Nathan Millward ride Dorothy?
Absolutely, very aggressive rider. No, I agree with you. I think, I ride Libby, and I like her, my R-rated GS, and she's very gentle, lazy, amiable sort of ride, although she will go for it, but it's not an instant go for it. She's got to build herself up to it. And that suits my personality. I like that kind of riding. It's the overlanding side of things for me. But I also have an F800 GS in the States, and that's much quicker. And I've actually dropped the bike because I've forgotten that it's not a lazy throttle open, and spun the back wheel out from underneath it. But yeah, I've never ridden a road racing motorcycle, but I can imagine if I was on one, I would want to ride that much faster. But you've ridden loads of different types of bikes, haven't you? So I should shut up and let you answer.
I think type of motorcycle you ride reflect your personality? Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, obviously on my trip, I took the sports bike. And I took the sports bike not because it was the best bike for that trip, but because I enjoyed riding that bike. Plus, there was definitely an element of people telling me you can't do it on that bike. So my stubborn nature was, well, I'm going to bloody do it on that bike. Do you know? So I think your bike definitely, I would say, in the vast majority of us, will reflect on your personality. And I don't just mean by if you ride a sports bike, that means you must be fast and you must love risk and speed and all this sort of stuff. It's just, you know, maybe you like the flashy looking bikes and you don't want something like a utility vehicle like a GS or a KTM Super Adventure, you know. But I mean, all bikes they've got the stereotypes, don't they? You know, like a pan-European, people think that, you know, you must be an ex-copper if you ride a a lot of coppers do ride pan-Europeans. You ride a GS, then you're going to be a high-vis wearing person that goes to the local cafe and back on a summer's day, you know, and never goes off-road. You know, if you're on a Gixxer Thou, then you'll go fast in straight lines and think you can outride everybody and wear one-piece race leathers. It's all bikes have I think a stereotype, but the riders can often be totally the opposite of what you think they're going to be. Does that make sense?
It really, really does. And the thought that's going through my mind now is, I'm sure everybody's seen that cartoon that you've got with the different male body shapes, and they go from the skinny guy up to the guy with the great big large belly, and it's from the guy who's riding trials bikes up to the guy who, for some reason, is put down as riding a Harley Davidson. And
that's right.
All the different stages in between that. And so it made me think of that. But, you know, I've got some friends who are the most gentle, amiable people that you could ever wish to meet off their motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And then they get their leathers on and they're sitting on their bike and you just can't keep up with them. So there's that element of their personality that comes out because of their motorcycle. But isn't this one of the most wonderful things about motorcycling? It doesn't matter who you are or what your personality is like, there's something in motorcycling for you.
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
Nothing with.
Yeah, it's a leveler, isn't it? It's a total leveler. It's like, it doesn't matter what background you come from, doesn't matter how much money you've got, what class you are, religion you are, colour you are, sex, it doesn't matter. Just, you know, if you've got a love for bikes, straight away you've got something in common with total random strangers when you turn up at somewhere. Yeah,
brilliant.
And I find it a good leveler in that, you know, I am by no means the fastest person ever on a bike, but I can ride a bike okay. But I couldn't beat anyone in a 40-metre sprint. Do you know what I mean? But put me on a motorbike and I'm much more on a par with most people out there. So for me, it's like, I'm never going to be fast on my own two legs, but put me on a bike and I've got that sense of pace and agility, which I don't possess naturally. So for me, it just opens doors. I love it. That was actually Will Carroll asked the first part of that question, and Stuart Bailey said, does your personality reflect in your choice of motorcycle? So I like how you flipped that. And yeah, I think that's true, Stuart. Yeah. Next one, Colonel Bullen. Well done, Bruce. Another great guest for both of you. Do you invest in winter riding kit and summer riding kit? Or do you just invest in one and layer up as necessary?
Go for it, Bruce.
I'm in a very, very fortuitous position now where occasionally I get offered kit. So because of the TV show, we've just been kitted out by Spiddy. So I've got a Spiddy touring suit. I was supposed to have like a Siddy leather suit, but they don't do leathers my size anymore, so I didn't get that. And they do like casual clothing, but I don't fit any of their jeans, so I've just got a jacket. But, you know, normally, if I'm paying for it myself, I haven't got the money to get different types of kit, so I bit the bullet and bought Rucker on the old 0% finance, and Infinity Motorcycles. And for me, that does everything. So in the summer months, I'll open the vents, sweat a bit, and have a t-shirt on. And in the winter, I put the sort of padded thermal jacket that you get with it, and it's brilliant. So for me, just one suit that fits all with my own money. And if I had the money, then yeah, I would buy different suits for different weathers. What about you, Sam?
When I did the big trip, I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no friends who were motorcyclists, and there weren't forums around and things like that. So it was just a case of, well, you've got to wear protective clothing. What are you going to do? And where are you going to be riding? And I knew enough about Africa to know that it can be as cold there as it can be hot. So I needed to be able to do something that was going to cover me for both aspects, but I knew that I was going to be mostly hot. Now, at the time also, I was very conscious that I didn't know if I had enough money to actually make it the full length of Africa, in spite of having sold everything I'd got virtually.
Yeah.
And I had a stroke of luck because I was in Fowler's in Bristol, and somebody had in the manufacturing stage had put the wrong size label in a leather jacket, and this bizarrely hadn't been picked up on. So a medium jacket, which was me, had been sized extra large. And I could just imagine all of these big burly bikers trying to get this tiny little jacket on. And so it was reduced down to 20 quid. And I tried it on just thinking, oh, what the hell, it's 20 quid. Who knows, maybe I can grow a bit. And it fit perfectly. So there was me. I was settled with a leather jacket. I had bike jeans that I'd made myself. So in other words, I'd sewn patches in the knees and the hips and that sort of stuff. And I had waterproof overclothes. And that was what I traveled with. And it was not brilliant, but it was fine. When I got back, treated myself to a laminated bike jacket, and it was absolutely brilliant, but I sweated buckets in this thing whenever I was anywhere that was hot. I've now got, my favorite jacket now, because I've got several, because just the way it happened. I've got a Held Crazy 2, and I love this. It's not laminated, but it's full of vents.
Yeah.
So during the summer months, I can open those up, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's got a Gore-Tex waterproof liner that you can either wear inside the jacket or on the outside of the jacket. And I kind of like that because instead, if it starts to drizzle, I don't have to take the jacket off to fit the thing. I can just pull it on over the top of the outside, and it works very nicely for me because I've got it as a wandering around off the bike waterproof jacket. But I always buy my kit too big, because that way, when it's cold, I can be layering up underneath it. I've got the space to do that and not feel like I've just turned myself into a sausage. But also during the summer, that extra bit of space on the inside means that the air's circulating. But the one thing I learned very quickly when I started doing this was always make sure that you're buying a jacket where when you're wearing it looser, you can make sure that the protective pads are going to stay in the right place. So in other words, it may be looser, but your pads have got to stay on your elbows and they've got to stay on your shoulders. And if you're buying a jacket that's a little bit big so you can layer, and they don't do that, then look for another one.
That is very good advice. Yeah, hadn't even entered my mind, because I very rarely ever get anything that's too big. So I'm generally not in a position where I can go a size up. It's like, what is the biggest you have got? That got me thinking, you talking about that, because I suddenly thought, God, yeah, on my trip, I did it in a leather suit. And the reasons behind that were just, that's what I owned. So that's what I took. But it still doesn't bother me too much to be cold and wet, to be perfectly honest. If I'm out for a big long ride in the UK and it's winter, then yeah, okay, I think ahead. Well, now I got rucker, so it doesn't really matter. But normally, just getting cold and wet didn't bother me too much. And on the trip, I took a leather suit because that's what I owned, and I had a waterproof oversuit to go over the top of it, and I think I did have a fleece as well that I used as a pillow, so I could just whack that over the top of the leather jacket as long as it wasn't raining, and that did me. So I think it's what you're used to, isn't it? It's what your level of tolerance for the weather and like being comfortable in your kit, what are you comfortable wearing? For me, wearing leathers didn't bother me too much, to be perfectly honest. Now I would be like, what are you doing? You're a maniac. But at the time, it didn't bother me.
Oh, and I think that that's another thing that's a learning curve, isn't it? And I also think that in the last 10, 15 years, the variety and the flexibility of the kit that's available changed massively. I mean, I wonder how many more motorcycle clothing manufacturers there are now than there were 15 years ago. And bringing out some very, very good kit.
Yeah, definitely. Price has gone down, and unless you're... I do find it very limiting being, I'm a 52 inch chest, I think it is, 6'3". If you're a bigger chap, then some places, some manufacturers it's very hard to get, especially leathers. It's very hard to find stuff to fit you, for sure. Spidey, Italian, Dionysi, they're getting better. But a lot of places, you've literally got to go for the American stuff, haven't you? Try and find the American manufacturers and they'll cater for you. Mm-hmm. But now, there's, women's kit, probably a prime example. I've had username Kate and Vanessa, a girl on a bike on here. Yep. They were both saying that the kit available for women these days, it's not just the man's jacket in pink. It's, it's properly tailored stuff and, does the job.
One of the things that Birgit always comments about is that the gear for girls is getting much, much better, but the manufacturers still aren't getting the glove situation right. She's got tiny hands, and the fingers are inevitably still sticking out a half an inch to an inch over the top of what she needs, even though the rest of the hand fits. Yeah. And she finds that really annoying.
I find with some manufacturers, sometimes I get gloves and the fingers, it's like they've been made for Edward Scissorhands. The fingers are enormous. And then other ones, they're tiny, or the fingers fit, but the thumbs are extra long. So, you end up with this big flappy bit at the end of your thumb. Yep. Maybe I've just got short thumbs, I don't know.
I'm looking at mine now.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Colonel's got a separate question for you, Sam. He said, for Sam, how did you find South Africa and will you ever go back?
I'm so glad you asked this question. How long have we got? South Africa to me is in the drop dead gorgeous category as far as a country to visit is concerned. I fell in love with it within a couple of days of being there, and that was in spite of the fact that I arrived there with 17 healing bone fractures. The variety of the landscape, the scenery, the coast, the mountains, just absolutely fantastic. The variety of the roads, I was blown away by it. Some of the best gravel roads in the world, in some of the longest, straightest asphalt roads that allow you to enjoy every second of the scenery to the sides almost. I really, really liked it. I was fascinated by the different cultures that are mixed into the country too, and I'm very much a people person, so that sort of side of things is important to me. Would I go back? Oh, can I have a plane ticket, please?
Yeah. How did you find... Now, a lot of people automatically think, as soon as you mention South Africa, they think of the crime, they think of the carjackings and everything that's going on. How did you feel over there? Did you feel on edge at all, or did you feel probably not perfectly safe? That's maybe the wrong thing to say, but was it as bad as you thought it was going to be in terms of personal safety? Or
that's kind of difficult for me to answer because I'm not up to date on it, other than what friends and family tell me. I had no idea that I had family in South Africa. I only discovered them by picking up a telephone directory when I was in Zimbabwe and approaching South Africa. And because I always did that, and this is pre-internet. So, and I was brought up to believe that my father and I were the last surviving males with my family name. So I was just curious as I was traveling. And there, all of a sudden, there's good grief. There are Manicoms in South Africa. Wow, I've got to try and meet up with these guys.
Well, and you just drop them a call?
Yeah, absolutely. Just fantastic. And some of the men have even got noses that kink to one side, and a lot of them have got moustaches and all of this sort of stuff, and all of them have got receding hairlines. But the characters that I learned about there as part of the family and the insight it gave me into the country was just fantastic. And the story behind this was that my family was very much a seafaring, trading family from the southwest of England. I had no idea about this. This is just all stuff that's turned out over the years.
Wow.
One of my ancestors was the chandler to Nelson's Victory, for example.
Seriously?
Just all this sort of stuff.
Wow.
A lot of my ancestors are from Holland and from Germany, which explains why Birgit sometimes says I'm more German than she is. But I just love all of this stuff. Where do we come from?
Yeah.
But just the insight that they linking up with these people gave me in South Africa was fantastic, because it allowed me to get underneath the skin of a country. And every overlander knows that even if you spend a significant amount of time in a country, unless you get the opportunity to spend real time with people who live, eat, sleep and breathe the place, then you don't really get the real feel for what's actually happening. So just huge value for me to link up with these people. And you asked me a question, and as usual, I've rattled away at a tangent and forgotten what the question was.
Just how did you feel safe when you were in South Africa? Or were you conscious that, this has a different side?
In 1992, so 2 years before apartheid finished, no, I wasn't conscious of there being danger there at all. I had received all of the warnings and listened very carefully to them, as you do, but then just went in and did everything with my eyes and ears open. Yeah. And there were a couple of times that I had my pocket felt, but I knew exactly what was going on and just turned around to the guy, because it was always the guy, gave them a big beaming grin, got a greenback, and they went off without having finched anything. But other than that, I wasn't conscious of there being danger at all. I was very conscious of a lot of people afraid of what was going to happen when apartheid did finish. A lot of uncertainty, people leaving the country, going to places like Canada and Australia and so on. So there was a lot of uncertainty there. I was back again 4 years later, so 2 years after apartheid finished, and things had changed then. There was more fear from both black and white people. It was quite interesting to see how things had changed. I can't comment on what's going on now because I'm not there now, but I keep a very firm finger on the pulse there because I would love to go back, and I have got friends and family there and they keep me fed with information, but without having been there myself, I can't comment. But would the things that I'm hearing put me off going back? Not a cat's chance. I'd be down there like a shot.
Same with me. South Africa was on my list originally, but obviously things went a different path. But I have friends who are like family that live in Joburg, and they were genuinely scared for me to come because I was going to visit them on my bike, and they were just like, you won't be able to stop anywhere. Just don't stop once you get into any city. Don't stop until you get to us. Just keep coming. And it struck me, at the time, just thinking, you must live in fear over there. Surely it can't be that bad. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have travelled there on bikes, and they all basically say, in sort of some of the towns and cities, you've got to be aware that it certainly is going on around about you, but it's like anywhere really. Just as you said, ride with your eyes open and your ears open and be aware of what's going on round about you, and they've all been fine. Anywhere can be like it. I'm a firm believer that
agree.
There's issues I nearly got bike jacked in London, right next to Big Ben. These things can happen anywhere, I think.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, wouldn't put me off going, definitely.
Nope.
Right, so who was that? That was Colonel. Nick Turnbull's the next one. Hi both. I loved the first podcast with Sam, so many thanks to him for agreeing to come back for more. My question to you both is, how do you think the current difficulties, the pandemic, will affect the long-term future of world travel? Good question. While I have a couple of tours planned for the UK this year, I just can't see myself going further afield just yet, which is a great pity. So, overland travel post-pandemic, what are you thinking?
I saw that Dave Henderson had also asked a question of a very similar ilk. So perhaps Nick wouldn't mind if I answered both him and Dave at the same time.
This is how prepared Sam is, you see. This is how prepared Sam is. He pre-reads questions and puts thought into them.
See the questions that are coming in. I tell you what, your listeners are absolutely fantastic. At least 50%, if not more, of the questions I've never been asked before. Yeah. And that's really, really nice. So top stuff. Thank you to everybody who's sent in a question. It's really good fun. I so enjoy this. So cheers. Thank you.
Me too. You never know what you're going to get, do you? And it's not always about, like, it won't always be about world travel, overland travel. It can be about absolutely anything. And that's what I love about the podcast. It's proper conversation. Yep. Anyway, I'm waffling. Over to you.
This is such a hot topic. I've actually written down some notes on this because I want to be careful what I say. I talk about this sometimes on Adventure Rider Radio Raw. We get the question or similar questions, but it's I've answered the question on my Facebook page, and I have had hate mail. I almost never get hate mail. Yeah, and this is how enthusiastic people are over this subject, and I'm using the word enthusiastic with due intent. I'm going to say these things with the comment that I'm quite prepared to learn, and if I'm wrong with my thoughts on these, then I will adapt how I'm thinking. I've paid very close attention to what's going on, in part because it's a bit like watching my childhood science fiction comics coming to life. All of the stories about the risk of living in polytunnels because we don't go outside into the world because it's going to be full of virus and all of these sorts of things. And within the first few months of this kicking off, I was seriously thinking, well, my God, maybe it's going to be that bad and we're going to end up being this way. So there's been part of it has been entertaining for me to pay so much attention. The comments that I want to make next are really because I think that people need to get out on the road still, because we live in an amazing world, and unless people travel, then there's no real perspective for all of the magic that they actually have at home too, and for the things that we all take for granted. When we see stuff on the news, if we've been to a country, we know for sure how much BS is being told and how much factual incorrectness there is woven into the story for the sake of scandal and drama.
Absolutely.
And one of the things about travel that is so important is that people get that perspective. Also, because of my kidney transplant and being on the high risk, I want to travel again. My life is travel. I want to know whether I'm going to be able to do it. So I've been paying close attention to what's going on, and I've been talking to quite a lot of medics as we've been going along. So my thoughts are, overlanding will start again, but it's going to be different. It's going to take a long time for the greater percentage of the world to be vaccinated. And of course, none of us know whether there are going to be side versions of COVID-19, and the COVID-19 speaks the name, version 19 of it, that are going to come to life in the future. But so much more is known about COVID now because of the extent of this pandemic, because it has been a pandemic, that actually I think vaccinations for any variations that might happen in the future will be far quicker come across, and the need for them will be far quicker identified. So I think the risk of those mutants taking over are less likely, but I am an optimist, and I'm happy to be one. I think that if people treat travel in the times of COVID-19 with respect and a lack of grumbles, then we will be faster back out on the road again. I think that travel knocks the sharp edges off people very quickly. You speak to somebody 6 months into a long journey and they're a very, very different person to the person they were before they started off. those sharp edges just get rounded off so fast by the things that you learn, the mistakes that you make, the people that you meet, the times you fall off your bike and survive, and the times you fall off and don't, or ding yourself anyway. So you learn. I think we're going to be able to carry on traveling because if we continue treating others with respect, and we put even more emphasis on treating others with respect when we're traveling, as well as treating ourselves with respect, then we've got a chance of it being a relatively straightforward thing to do again, but different. There are going to be a series of things, I think, that are going to be lost for overlanders, certainly to begin with. Now, one of the things that we've already talked about, and I think is an important aspect of travel, is the smile between strangers. And there are going to be lots of instances where we're still going to be having face masks on. And that's the respect to ourselves and the respect to other people. So we're going to lose out on those smiles. But I tell you what we're going to learn to do instead. We're going to learn to look for the smiles in people's eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm already seeing it happening. I'm already watching it. And you can tell when somebody's smiling because their eyes are just zinging. So we'll start focusing on those instead of teeth. So we're going to adapt. Masks, yes. Handshakes, probably no. And that's a shame because the handshake was one of the international language things that needed no translator. But maybe we will end up doing things like bumping fists or elbows or touching heels on shoes, and that'll just become normal. We will adapt.
It's already become normal, hasn't it? You know, people who a year ago would never dream of fist pumping or walking up to somebody and touching elbows. It's a matter of course now, isn't it? It's just normal.
And it's actually something that's fun. Because it feels slightly silly I'm still at this stage, but so what? If something makes us laugh and helps us stay alive and help other people stay alive in a situation like this, then that's fine. I can do that. Good excuse for a smile. I'm seeing a lot of stuff online about vaccination certificates and people saying, I'll never carry one. It's a police state. It's government control. And I'm just thinking to myself, guys, grow up. Travelers have been traveling with vaccination certificates for decades.
Absolutely.
Yellow fever certificates and all sorts of things, and it's quite normal. And why would you not want to? It's if it allows you to go places where without you can't go, why stamp your feet? Why not just accept how it is and just say, okay, I'll carry that bit of paper. That's not a problem. It's opening up opportunities for me.
It's no different than a visa, is it? It's no different than a requirement to get a visa. So it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
I've got 4 thoughts that I'm going to round this off on because I know that I'm rambling with this, but I feel quite strongly about it, as I think everybody does because it's affected our lives so much and can affect the future of travel. We motorcyclists spend a lot of time outside. And we can spend a lot of time outside, camping and all of those sorts of things. And that is a major advantage. A lot of the of COVID gets passed on in enclosed situations. So the more we spend outside as motorcyclists, the safer we can actually be, and the less likely we're to pass it on to other people. We can also choose to spend more time in warm climates. And it seems from statistics that people who spend a lot of time outside in warm climates are less likely to catch it. That's brilliant. Well, I kind of want to travel with the sun anyway. And I always tried to do it. It was only when something had gone wrong and I ended up being in the wrong season somewhere like northern Iran and Turkey in the middle of the winter, which were one of the stupidest things I've ever done. The rest of the time I was traveling where it was sunshine and warm. I think that most motorcyclists aren't arrogant tossers who care nothing about other people. We're seeing words from the few that are, but I think most motorcyclists are caring, considerate people, and they care about other people. And that's one of the reasons why I love being a motorcycle rider so much. It's the other people that I'm spending time with. I also think that anyone who intends to travel is somebody who already knows that they're going to have to adapt to the countries that they're going to be going in. So this is
Yep.
just another form of adapting. And okay, so it's a new challenge. But motorcycle overlanders have always had to deal with challenges. And that's actually part of the buzz of travel. It's dealing with those challenges. Sorry, rant over. But
No.
I feel really positive about travel. I think it's going to happen again.
I do as well. I mean, maybe I just have too much of a simplistic outlook on a lot of things. But to me, it's just like, well, if you need the vaccination, you need the vaccination. If you want to go there, you've got to get the vaccination and just go. As you said, no point stamping your feet about it. And I don't see any difference between, having to have a vaccination certificate to travel to having to have a visa to enter our country, the requirement to carry a passport. I don't see any difference for me. It's okay, it's new, but what is the difference? So, and I was on Nathan's Lockdown Diaries last week, I think it was, a week before. And Nathan's quite pessimistic about the prospect of overland travel, like post-COVID. And I was quite surprised by it, because I thought, I would have thought Nathan would be quite simplistic about it as well, in that, it's just something you're going to have to do. But I don't know, he's worried that a lot of borders might be shut, and I think initially that might be the case until those countries get their infrastructure up to the point that we are here. Certainly, we're sort of leading the charge, aren't we, in the UK? Really, I think. But yeah, I think long term, it certainly doesn't bother me. I'm more concerned about what is travel within mainland Europe going to be like for me as a Brit now with my bike than I am about overland travel because of COVID, to be perfectly honest. I don't think it's going to stop me, but it's just the unknown at the moment. No one can say to you, because nobody's done it yet, what's it going to be like to ride your bike down to Dover, go across into Calais, and then cross into various different countries? How easy is it going to be? I don't know, but it doesn't put me off. I'm still going to do it.
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to be relatively straightforward, and I think that
yeah,
I see comments from people to the effect of, how are we going to be received by people from mainland Europe countries? And I think that mostly it's going to be just a case of, we still don't understand why you did that, but I think that people are just people, and they'll be getting on with their everyday lives. They'll be confused about why we did it. I'm using "we" very carefully. And I think that it'll just be another set of rules that we'll have to learn to live with, and we'll live with it, and we'll do it. And as far as overseas travel is concerned, some countries we won't be able to go to because they haven't got their act together, or haven't been able to afford to get their act together, for example. And so, we just won't go there. We'll have to go somewhere else. We'll zigzag our route. It's a bit like riding through Africa. How many countries in Africa, and there's always something popping off, and you can be coming towards a border, and all of a sudden you can't go into that country because there's suddenly a civil war. So you go around it. And we're just going to do that. I think, I'm not quite sure where everything's coming from Nathan, but I think that his life has been hit pretty hard by this, just setting up Dorothy's Speed Shop and the tour company and all of these sorts of things. It's just been bang, bang, bang for him. And I think that is very, very difficult. And I think it's a worrying time for any person who has set up a business or trying to run a business.
I know.
Quite. I mean, it's weird old times.
Yeah.
I just keep saying to myself, look, I'm so glad that I don't live in India, for example, and the only way that I can put food on the table for my family is to go out and mingle with people with typical lack of Indian distancing, so face to face, just to be able to feed my family. I'm so glad I don't have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Definitely. Right, we'll move on from that one.
Oh, good. Find us something cheerful.
Next one, Pete English. Right, we're relying on you here, Pete. Lift the mood. Well, actually, I'm not down in the slightest. I'm very positive about what we just spoke about. Pete English. Hi guys, hope you're both fitting well. Question: what would be your occupation if you'd followed your childhood dreams? I like this one.
So do I. Interesting. Pete,
Go
where
on.
on earth did this question come from? I'd
You
love
do
to
not
know.
want to know what goes on in Pete's mind, I tell you.
Right. So go on, you first then, Bruce.
When I was growing up until basically up until about the age of 14 when I started playing rugby, right up until that time, all I wanted to be in life was a middle linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. I was going to move to America and I was going to play American football for the Dallas Cowboys. That was it.
Wow. Fantastic. What a brilliant dream.
Literally lived and breathed it. Played
Wow.
it. That was what I was going to do.
What position did you play rugby?
And in rugby,
Yeah.
I was mostly second row. Sometimes loose head, sometimes tight head prop, and I sort of towards the end was getting moved back to number 8, and then I discovered beer and women, and that was the end of that. Really,
I was a real passion for rugby. I played on the wing to begin with.
right?
My grandfather played wing for Derbyshire County, so they reckoned that, well,
Wow.
if he should, then I should.
Yeah, you
And I
should.
hated it out there. Schoolboy rugby. My God, there were so many teams I played on where I got the ball at the last minute just before the biggest guys came and jumped on top of me. So
Yeah.
I didn't like it out there. But I found my niche playing flanker.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I loved that position. I was a lot stockier than I am now, but definitely not stocky enough to play prop or second row, and certainly not number 8. But flanker, I thoroughly enjoyed the nimbleness and the cut and the thrust and just being in the midst of everything. I ended up having to stop playing rugby though because as my eyesight got worse, I stopped being able to tell how big the other guy was.
Obviously, that can be an advantage. Definitely.
I was called Fearless Sam for a while.
Just couldn't see. That was all. What were you? Blindside or open?
Open.
Flanker. Ah, okay. All right. Yeah. So you weren't the vicious, horrible, evil one. You were the dynamic. Let's try and do something one.
Yep.
I've played rugby with some of the most evil, twisted people ever. Loved it. In the pack. Like second row, being not second row, the amount of times I had my face smashed. You know, when you go down into the scrum and then you look and you can just see either like the second, your opposite number just disengage and whack through it comes.
Yep. And it's, I mean, I did play prop a few times and I really didn't like it. And that was when I discovered why so many props wear the leather hats, the leather helmets, and I can't remember for the life of me what it's skull caps. Because the first time I played the prop on the other side, he was just doing this with his head.
Yeah.
I had bloody ears by the end of that match.
Well, people will literally start chewing your face as they went down. It was like at some games, as you engage on the front row, they would grog, they would spit straight in the face of the opposite number as you engaged, and you're just like, oh my God, what is going on here?
But we never talk about that in public, do we? Because it's a ruffian's game for gentlemen, isn't it?
It was, yeah, absolutely. I look at the games now, and I mean the guys are just they're a different breed. They're absolute athletes now.
Yeah.
They're so big, they're so like their fitness levels are amazing. But I look at the scrums and just think, that's not a scrum, you know. Where's all the fun and games? They don't even look like they're really competing in the scrums anymore. But I'm sure they are. But
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so what would I do?
Your occupation.
When I was a youngster, because my parents had lived and worked in Africa, and we came back to the UK and had virtually nothing. So my father, who had been headmaster of a school in Africa, ended up having to start off back here as if he'd just come down out of teacher training college.
Right.
So when you've got 4 kids and you're middle-aged and you have to do that, the only way you're really going to get on at a rate of knots to get yourself onto a salary rate that you can feed your family properly is to move a lot. So we moved a lot. I went to 7 schools.
Wow.
And as a result of the changing syllabus and the different subjects and the kid desire to try and fit in and not to be the jungle boy, as I was nicknamed in several schools, I didn't study particularly hard. I was more interested in sports and things like that because although I wasn't very good at it, I was very determined. And that meant that I ended up getting on teams. But that way I started to fit in. And that was more important to me than being academically sound. So when I got to 18, I didn't have very good qualifications. but I love to be outdoors, and I like growing things, and I've got an artistic streak. And the more I thought about it, the more I decided that actually what I would like to be is a landscape gardener and designer.
Oh.
And just the whole idea of it, the making something beautiful, the sharing, the being outdoors, the fact that every day you could see what you'd achieved, all of those sorts of things really appealed to me. But I didn't manage to get a job because I had the worst possible grade in maths, and they wouldn't take on anybody that didn't have a maths O level. And of course, this was back when calculators were considered to be the biggest cheat out, and honourable people didn't use calculators.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if calculators had been allowed, wow, how different life would have been.
I remember that in like the maths exams and stuff. You had to show your working. You weren't allowed to use the calculator. So everything had to be written down to show your working. Like even if you knew the answer, you couldn't just write it down. You had to show the working. Yeah.
Yep. We're sounding old here, Bruce.
Man, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? Times were better then, Sam. Times were better. Next one, Mark Fulcher. Oh, God. Right, here we go. Mark tends to be asking questions about his home life, so let's see. Aye me ducks. Lovely to hear that Sam is back on the podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed the last time he was on. As you're both established round-the-world overlanders, my question for you both is, which way should the loo roll sit on the holder? Should it be positioned so the roll pulls from the back or pulls from the front?
Well, Mark, this is such a good question. It's really nice to have a question from somebody who's interested in the philosophy of life. I mean, yeah, okay. But, I'm glad to hear that you're rolling with this question and that you're trying not to give your wife a chance to tear you off a strip because, this is important. Now, I'm a great believer that everything needs to be powered from behind, as in the wheels. But in this case, I want easy access. So I always put the paper on the outside of the roll.
You're a front man, are you?
Oh, absolutely.
I genuinely don't care, but just in my mind, looking at it, I would think, well, it would go at the back, closest to the wall. I don't know any reasoning behind it, but when I picture it, that's in my mind when I think about it. But
well, I'll tell you what, your way of doing it is, and I have no idea which way you do this, Mark, or which way your wife is telling you that you need to do it. So I hope
that's more like
anybody in it here. But in our bathroom, we've got a window. And I sometimes come into the bathroom on a windy day when the window's been open, find that the wind's unrolled the toilet roll because I've had the piece of paper on the outside. So perhaps on the outside is not a good idea. But in an emergency, easy access. That rocks.
Oh, where can we go from this question? I don't think there is anywhere really we can go from this one. Cheers, Mark. Thanks for that. Next one, Rebecca Christie. Looking forward to hearing Sam. So a question for you both. If you could only take 3 items besides your clothes and riding gear on your round-the-world trips, what would they be? 3 items for a trip.
Oh, hi, Rebecca. Can I assume that I'm allowed to take my motorcycle and berg it?
Yes.
And then go from there.
Yep.
My passport, my wallet with the usual inside it, and my travel insurance. And everybody who knows me knows why I've just added that on the end, because it's kind of important because I fall off a lot. If I'm allowed a 4th and a 5th, then my wide-brimmed hat, because that works as my sunshade. And I'm kind of partial to it. And my collapsible umbrella, which is one of the most important pieces of equipment that I've ever travelled with for quite a lot of reasons.
Oh, go on then. What's the story behind that?
Collapsible umbrella. I learned the value of umbrellas in Ethiopia. Stinking hot, and people walking around with their umbrellas up in their own portable pools of shade.
Ah, hadn't even entered my mind.
When it's monsoon season and everybody's walking around in their pack-a-macs, which I always think about as being boil in the bags.
Yeah.
When you've got your collapsible umbrella up, you can be walking around in shorts and T-shirts and flip-flops feeling quite comfortable rather than boil in a bag. If the weather's a bit off, you can be using your collapsible umbrella. So, maybe only 6 inches, 7 inches long. Fantastic for taking photographs under, keeping your camera dry and so on. If you're camping, absolutely perfect. Pop it up, stick it out the tent door, dash to the loo in the middle of the night, no worries at all, back into the tent, you new dry, etc., etc. There are lots of reasons why. I always talk about this in presentations, and a chap that I met in the United States sent me a message about 6 months after I'd done a presentation at a BMW dealership there. And he said, as you know, Sam, I'm a motorcycle trainer. And I took your tip about collapsible umbrellas on board with me, and I tell everybody about it. And we had a chap who fell off his bike, broke his leg. I used the umbrella as a splint for his broken leg. Perfect. Wow. Here's another use for it. I just thought, yeah, here we go. So my collapsible umbrella.
See, this, I feel such a heathen. I really do. I mean, this is why Sam is like the godfather of the Overland world. Just,
Not at all.
Just doesn't even enter my mind. And then I'm listening to it and thinking, oh my God, how have I survived all my like 44 years of age and I've never owned a collapsible umbrella? How do I function? I'm going to have to get one now.
Well, there's one tip, Bruce. Get yourself one with a really horrible colour. Forget spots and things like that, because that's just crass. But get something like turquoise or something like that, because who's going to steal a turquoise collapsible umbrella? Get yourself a black one, and that's it. It's gone.
Wow, I'm gonna seriously look at getting myself a little portable umbrella now. Just
that's
chuck it in the bag.
Kit.
Done.
Great kit.
Right, Rebecca. My 3 items. Okay, so I'm going to go out with the essentials for Overland, which passport, visas, insurance, that sort of stuff. My 3 sort of must-have items would be, well, I always ride with tubeless tyres, so I'd have a puncture repair kit, as in the plug kit, just because it can get you mobile again. I would have, I mean, is your phone considered essential? Or could that be a luxury item? I don't know. I would say I'd have my phone, because it's a way of finding out where you are. It's a way of contact. It's a way of getting help. All sorts. And let's think. God, now I think it's got to be the umbrella, but I'm not going to steal your idea, because
no, don't steal it. That's it. That's the whole point of overlanding.
I'd never thought about it.
We're sharing.
What other item? What other item did I have that I thought? So phone, puncture repair kit, probably the first aid. I've always got a first aid kit, a little first aid kit in my rucksack, because I always wear a rucksack on the bike, so it's in there all the time. And it should the worst happen, at its most basic level, it's something to ram in some hole that's bleeding and hopefully save you for a little bit longer. First aid kit, puncture repair kit, and a phone.
Nice
Done.
one.
Yeah. Next one, Scott Dobie. Great to see Sam back. Sam, what do you think your trip would have been like if you hadn't met Birgit?
Whew. Scott, good question again. Well, I think I would have taken a lot more risks, because when you're traveling with somebody else, you and they feel responsibility towards each other's safety. So you end up doing less things on the spur of the moment and less risky things, which in my case is probably a darn good idea, because I do tend to get myself in trouble when I'm traveling on my own. I really enjoy being around other people, but I think that if I hadn't met Birgit and we hadn't got on so well together, I would have carried on being a bit of a two-wheeled hermit. And that can be great in many ways, but I found that the longer I traveled on my own, the more selfish I became, because it was more of a case of waking up in the morning and thinking, what do I want to do today? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to stop? And when you're traveling with somebody else, then it's a joint decision. And poor Birgit had to suffer for at least 6 months of me taking that time to get out of this business when we first started traveling together. I would have learnt less. I think one of the brilliant things about traveling with somebody else is if your heart's open, then one of the things that you do as a co-traveler is make sure that the person that you're traveling with has the best possible trip. And I learned this through traveling with Birgit. I'd never learned it before. In other words, for example, Birgit loves museums. So let's start going to museums. I never did. And the quality of my trip was totally enhanced because I was trying to do something that helped Birgit's trip to be better. The only reason that we went to Ushuaia was because Birgit likes to go to the end of things. And well, why not? I would have stayed further up north in the hot countries rather than battle with the Patagonian winds and the cold and all of the rest of it. But what great adventures I had as a result of Birgit's ambition. So yeah, I think my trip would have been incredibly different had Birgit and I not met. And I think worse because being selfish is not a good state of mind.
No. I still struggle now with that focus on where I've got to get to mentality. I find it even if I'm out on a bike on the UK and I'm heading somewhere, I'll see places along the way and go, oh, that looks interesting, but I almost have to force myself to stop and go and look at it. And the amount of time, I would say 9 times out of 10, I probably wouldn't. I've got to get here. I've got to get there. And I remember on my trip, certainly probably up until Russia, certainly almost all of Europe, and even going down the west of Africa, I was on that mentality of, all right, I've got to get to that point by the end of today. And the amount of times I would see stuff and go, oh, that would be interesting, but I will keep going. And obviously now you look back and go, what's a twat? That's the perfect opportunity.
That's that 6-week period that I mentioned earlier on. It's the coming down from the rush of everyday life, the must get to the stage where you're taking the time. Because hang on a minute, those are the things that I'm out here for. But it takes time to come down, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But I even remember being in South America, Peru. I was in Peru and, oh God, what's it called? Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza. And in my head I was like, right, I'm gonna ride to, obviously I couldn't ride to Chichen Itza, but I'd ride to the place, get on the, is it the train, and then you have to do the hike to get there. I'll do all that. And then I remember noticing that my tyres were starting to get very worn. And I think I was about 600 or 700 miles from Lima, the capital. And I was in a hostel one night, and I Googled and found a place that I could get tyres in Lima for the bike. And I remember thinking to myself, right, I'll just go straight to Lima then and get this sorted, because I can always come back and, I'll fly back with the missus and we'll do Chichen Itza. I just think, I look back at it now and think, you absolute idiot. What an opportunity to go there and experience all that on my bike. And, what an idiot. Will I go back to Chichen Itza? I don't know. I don't think you can visit it at the moment, can you? It's shut to tourists.
Everybody does it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the reality is there isn't enough time to fit everything into a trip anyway. No. You've got to ride past things sometimes, but we all ride past things. I posted a picture on Facebook a week or so ago. Birgit and I were in Oregon, and there was a road sign saying Sam's Valley, 2 miles. Did I go to Sam's Valley? No, I didn't. Why not? It was 2 miles away. What an idiot.
I have this picture when I was in Australia, and the chap who I was with at the time made us stop. He made us go back and get the picture, and I'm so glad he did, because I'd have just seen it, laughed and carried on going. But it's a signpost that says Bald Knob Road, so he was like, you've got to get a picture underneath that. And I was like,
absolutely.
So I have the picture now, and I do think to myself, if I hadn't met him and his family and gone for the ride with them, I would have never stopped and got that.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. So where were we? Scott Dobie, wasn't it? What would your trip be like if you hadn't met Birgit? Right. Rory Tinsley. Hi guys, I camped next to Sam a couple of years ago at the winter warmer, knowing nothing about him. I've now read all his books and can't believe I was so close to a legend. His talk on a mini adventure to Corsica and Sardinia is on my list of trips to do. My question: if you had the choice of the modern bikes out today for your original trip back in the day, which would you take? Big and heavy or light and nimble? Many thanks. Would you
Hi,
change?
Rory. Rory, it's great to hear from you, mate. Yeah, I remember us camping next door to each other. Very cool. Nice one. Would I change? This is not so straightforward to answer, in that the original plan was to ride the length of Africa, and with what I know now, would I ride a bike as big as Libby for Africa? No, probably not. I would be much more. I met a couple of people, a guy and a girl, riding XT 350s. And at the time I thought, wow, that makes so much sense. They will be far easier on the dirt roads than Libby was. Although part of the reason that Libby was a struggle on the dirt roads was because I was a rubbish rider. And in the hands of somebody who was a skilled, well-trained rider, a big motorcycle is not an issue. It's just a great way to go. But if I'm back at the time that I was there and being a complete novice, then I would have been much better off on a small bike. If we're talking round the world, then I think that my R80 GS was absolutely perfect, because you spend a lot of time on a complete mix of roads. And I know that with small bikes, people say it only feels like a small bike if you're on the wrong road. But, well, there are some times that I want to be able to do a bit of mile munching, and I want to be on the road with other traffic that I can compare speed with, rather than be dictated to by them and vulnerable because of speed. The bikes that are around now, smaller cc, lighter bikes, are way more capable than they were when I went around the world. The ability of some of these bikes now, I mean, let's take the Honda CR 250. What a fantastic looking bike this is, and what a great reputation it's building itself. And yeah, seriously consider going around the world on something like that. It can compete in just about any condition. Are they as tough as Libby? She had almost nothing go wrong with her in 8 years on the road, and did 200,000 miles before the gearbox even needed rebuilding, and all of that sort of stuff. So one has to take those things into account.
Yeah, definitely. It's a question you always asked, isn't it, about overland travel? What bike? What's the perfect bike? What bike would you take?
I think that the more important questions are, what's its roadside fixability? How reliable is it? Is it comfortable? Speed really doesn't matter when you're on a big overlanding trip. I think if I were to average out the speed that I did over the 8 years, then I would be very surprised if it was 50 miles, as much as 50 miles an hour. It's more important for it to be able to carry you and your home in comfort. So I think the reliability and the flexibility and the comfort things are really the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it totally depends on what sort of traveller are you, what sort of rider are you, and what you're used to. Because if you're, I'll take it from my background, I was used to a sports bike all the time, and obviously that's what I did my trip on. But after my trip, I moved to adventure bikes. The first, I would say, week of riding a big adventure bike, like the Triumph Explorer, one of the most comfortable, to this day, probably got the comfiest seat on any motorbike ever. It's amazing. Killed me. My back was in agony. My shoulders were in agony, because I've gone from riding hunched over like that all the time, just being sit upright in what everyone was telling me was a really comfortable bike. And I'm like, I'm in bits. I'm in absolute bits. So I think it's just what you're used to, isn't it?
I totally agree. I mean, people say to me all of the time, what's the best bike to take? Which I know isn't what Rory has asked. What's the best bike to take? In the end, it's the bike that you like riding. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Harley Davidson road bike or a Honda C90 or
Absolutely.
whatever. If you like riding it, go on it.
Yeah.
Every bike has got its advantages and disadvantages. And the most important thing is that what you're riding makes you smile.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I've said it before. It's what Jacques Lucassen said to me before my trip. Take the bike that makes you smile. And that is 100% spot on. Absolutely. Right, next one. Second last question from Patreon. We're nearly 2 hours in and we've not even finished Patreon. Blimey. Stuart Bailey. Hello, question for you both. I've signed up for a couple of guided tours, nothing like round the world, in the hope that using a guide would help me to see the best roads or sites. With a round the world trip, how do you try to find the best bits, or are you content just to be travelling?
Well, bearing in mind, Bruce, that you run tours, I'm going to jump straight in and answer this one before you do.
Go on.
The first thing that I'm going to say is there's absolutely nothing wrong with tours. If I had an opportunity to go on a tour next week, then I'd be there like a shot. For me, tours are one of the most fantastic ways of getting to learn a country intimately in a short space of time, because when you're overlanding, you've got time to bumble around and to make things up and stumble across them and so on. But when you're working in real life, you don't. So you want to be able to go to somewhere and know that you're going to be shown some of the best roads, some of the most amazing sites, etc., etc. So tours are brilliant, and it all depends on who's running them and whether their main aim is to make sure that their customer has a good time. And I'm saying that with experience, not personal experience, but friends' comments. When you're traveling and you're on a big trip, you've got really two sources of information, and the internet is absolutely fantastic. We talked a lot about Horizons Unlimited before, and that is an absolutely perfect opportunity. And there are so many Facebook groups which have incredible information. There's one about traveling through South America, for example, and the stuff that they've got on this Facebook page is absolutely fantastic. Things that you just wouldn't come across. I'm a bit old school, so I do like guidebooks, although particular types of guidebooks. I'm a real fan of the footprint guidebooks. They haven't changed hugely in the last 20 years, the same sort of depth of information and so on. Quite a few of the other guidebooks that are around have gone very much focused on gap year travelers. And they're more interested in telling you the best places to party and the which backpackers hostels have the best parties going on than they are which ones are in the most interesting parts of the town and which ones are the cheapest to help you with your budget. But the information that they can give you in sound bites about the customs and the culture and the history, they're well worth having a look at still. I tend not to buy new guidebooks, sorry guidebook producers, but second-hand ones in charity shops, so long as they're not way out of date, sales in bookshops, those sorts of things. The information that I've just been talking about doesn't change that much. But the internet is just fantastic. And the other thing, of course, is, and we mentioned this before too, didn't we? The people coming towards you when you're actually on the road. What's it like? What's the best border crossing? Where did you come across? How was it? Oh, did you find anywhere nice to stay in that place that had off-road parking for bikes? Yeah, I did. Or no, I didn't. But that hotel's great because it's cheap and they'll let you put your bike in the restaurant overnight. You have to have it out again in the morning. All this sort of stuff. It's great. The Bikers Underground Network. It's lovely, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. There is no better resource than a fellow overland traveller. Absolutely, and I found every now and then I'd book myself, certainly if I was aiming for a town or a city, I'd book myself into a hostel. And yeah, hostels is a party centre as well, obviously, but you're also meeting other overland travellers a lot of the time. And, you know, as you said, you get a lot of good information from people who come from where you're going to, and they'll be like, oh, you know, I went to this place and this was amazing. I went there, that wasn't so good. I've just met somebody that told me about a place. I missed it, so make sure you go there. You know, it's a great source. Basically, it's like the hub, isn't it? But it's a one-on-one type thing. Yeah, other people, just speaking with other people. No, go on.
Sorry, I'm completely bad habit of me getting enthusiastic and talking over.
There's a delay as well. There's like a second delay. So
A lot of people are using iOverlander. Now, I haven't used it yet,
I've not heard of it.
but oh, check it out. It's well worth going and having a meander through. There's lots of very useful information on it.
Okay.
That's a small I, Overlander. And if you're traveling in the United States, Canada in particular, then although this isn't so much an information place setup, Bunker Biker. Now, these are people who are giving you space either in their house or in their garden for you to put the tent up, or in their field or whatever to put a tent up. But the people, they're all motorcyclists, and they're all passionate about telling you where to go in the nicest possible way. I've seen some lovely comments from these people about somebody who's come to stay with them, and that person said, right, so I heard about this. So I hadn't planned it, didn't know about it. That's where I went next, and so glad I did. And sometimes it's just things like the best American breakfast that you can get that you could have just easily ridden on past, or the most amazing viewpoint that just isn't talked about. Locals know. So Bunker Biker is a very useful resource.
Awesome. So that's bunkerbiker.com and ioverlander.com. Right.
Yep.
I'll put those links in the show notes as well, folks. I'd never heard of them. Oh, awesome. Nice one. Right, so that was Stuart Bailey. Last one, David Wattret. Well, last one on Patreon. David Wattret. Question for both of you. What's the longest you've sat at a border crossing for? I sat at the Russian-Latvian truck border for over 18 hours. 12 of those were just in the queue to get to the compound. I know borders are all part of the fun of travelling, and many experiences and memories of places tend to start with a border crossing. Keep up the good work, Bruce. Right, borders. What's the longest you've taken?
Dave, one question that comes into my mind before I answer that is, are you actually a truck driver?
He is.
Right, okay, Dave, and then you're going to get the sticky end and the pointy end of the stick, aren't you? Because truck drivers, it must always be a long, slow business, the queues and the customs and all of the rest of it. I hitchhiked around Europe with truck drivers for just over a year. It was a fascinating thing to do. Brilliant views from up in the cabs, but the places that these guys took me to, absolutely amazing. Things that as an ordinary hitchhiker I would never have seen, and the things that I learned about travel from these guys was absolutely superb. So much respect to you guys. You've got a fairly knotty time at borders, I'm sure. Motorcycling, it's very different. You can be through very, very quickly indeed.
Yeah.
The longest I've spent at a border was 2 days, but that was because I wanted to. I'd actually passed through the border in 4 hours and just found the whole place so fascinating. I found a hotel just down the road and just went back and sat and people watched for 2 days.
Seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a brilliant thing to do. All of the coming and going and the expressions on people's faces, and you could tell people that were anxious on their journeys, and people had never crossed a border before.
Yeah.
People that were going to link up with family, other people who were on holiday or whatever else it was, and watching the touts and the beggars and the sharks and all of this sort of stuff. There's this just big pool of fun that's going on for somebody that isn't being hassled by it. An average, I guess, 2 to 4 hours. It was very rarely that long at a land border crossing. It did take me 6 weeks to get my bike out of the harbour in Madras, but, well, that's a wet border, isn't it? So it's going to be different. I like border crossings, as you can already tell. I think that they're fascinating places to be, but I think in part that comes down because I see them as being fascinating. And also, I have a set of rules that I follow at a border crossing. And I learned these the hard way, but once I started doing them, they never let me down. So the first thing is always be at the border in the queue when the border opens up first thing in the morning, and preferably right towards the front of the queue. Not necessarily at the front of the queue, but 3 or 4 people back, because then you can see what they do. That gives you an idea about where to go. If you've got time, and let's say you arrive at a border at 3 o'clock in the previous day, don't do it. Use the time to find out where the customs office is and to find out where the immigration office is. So when you go back to the border to do all of your stuff the next day, you're already running. It means that you don't have to deal with the so-called helpers. And in some places, these guys are absolutely lovely. I've never used one, but I've watched them and I've heard stories from other people. In other places, they're real rip-off merchants.
Yeah.
If we arrive late at a border, then we'll have a bit of a mooch around. We'll see the lay of the land, and then we'll go and find a hotel for the night. And even if we've got to ride 10 miles in the wrong direction to find a hotel where there's off-road parking for the bikes, because borders can be fairly dodgy places, and leaving your bike parked on the streets of the border is not a particularly wise thing to do. And then just chill. Relax. If you can change whatever money that you've got left over from the country that you're in, there'll be somebody else who's just come across the border from the other side and wants the currency for the country that you're in. So quite often you can do a little bit of money changing going on without dodgy rates and so on. But part of the fun of border crossings is finding out in advance what paperwork you need, and mostly it's really straightforward. It's your passport, it's making sure that you've got the visa, it's your ownership documents for the bike, it's carnet if it's necessary, all of those sorts of things, and making sure that you've got enough photocopies. Now, we always tried to get 7 photocopies. In part, that was just a wet finger in the air. 7's my lucky number, so that's always a good idea when you've got a border crossing coming up. But also, getting photocopies done at border crossings can be fairly tense in itself, in that I don't know about you, Bruce, but I've gone to border crossings and the one and only photocopier doesn't work.
Yeah.
So then you've had to ride back to the next town to the last town to get your photocopies. And
there's always a booming industry around it, isn't it? It's like the person that's dealing with you behind the desk, they'll have a photocopier behind them, but you can't use that. You have to go to the local shop, to his brother or his cousin, somebody. They've got a connection there. Go and give them the business for that photocopy. Yep. And then you come back and are told, okay, you've got that, but now I need photocopies of this. And you're like, why didn't you tell me?
And sometimes, they'll give you a piece of paper, won't they, that you haven't got copies of already, but you have to fill it out and then go and get copies of it. So it doesn't always work. But going armed with enough photocopies of the documents you're going to need, well, it can save you a lot of money at the border. It can save you time, and it can save you hassle. So that's a really good one. And embassies. We quite often, when we had been warned that a border crossing was coming up, we would be getting in touch with the embassy and saying, so what paperwork do we need? And the embassies are, well, you'll need this, that, and the other. Okay, so you get to the border and the official's saying, oh, mister, you're going to need one of these. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. I spoke to your embassy and I spoke to Mr. Such and Such at your embassy and he told me you didn't. You don't need it. Oh, right. Okay, the rules must have changed, sir. Okay, what we need is this then. And you just go from there. But we always carry a bag of boiled sweets or something like that with us. When I started off, it was a carton of cigarettes that I would be sharing around. Just an icebreaker, but a bag of boiled sweets, that works. It's a nice, friendly thing to do. But the other tip, I always take my tank bag, and a tank bag is something that has a shoulder strap that goes with it, so I'm not leaving it on the bike. And in that tank bag, I've got a couple of bottles of water, a packet of biscuits, a paperback, my more important paperwork and the copies, my camera, those sorts of things, so that if somebody does want to play silly buggers with me, well, hey, I'm there first thing in the morning. I'm fine. I've got something to eat. I've got something to drink. I've got something to keep me occupied, and they can play silly buggers all day if they want to. And sooner or later, they just get bored with you and just say, oh, mister, go. Yeah.
Once they realise that they can't, either they can't milk any more money from you, or you're not playing that game, or you're just in that too difficult box, that's it. You're done, isn't it? That's something I found on my trip, is I became aware, and I've spoke about this before, how adversely affected I was, certainly from being dehydrated, and also my blood sugar levels going down. So what you said, I started making sure I had water, top priority, always have some sort of fluid with me when I'm coming up to a border. And have a bit of food in me, because I'm like, don't poke the bear when I'm hungry. Do you know what I mean? And when you face a border crossing, can often just lead to a very horrible experience, because you're in a bad mood, which puts them in a bad mood, and it doesn't go well, does it?
Exactly what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is something that with COVID's probably going to change. And It bothers me a little bit because one of the things that we always used to do was when we got to a desk, we would always lean over and shake the official by the hand, give them a smile, say hello in their language. And that just broke the ice and started things rolling with a nice, respectful, smooth, calm sort of fashion. And we got treated that way in reverse. You go to a border and you're on edge and you're tired. People pick it up so quickly. And I found that when you're on a motorcycle, actually you're some entertainment in somebody's day. There aren't that many of us out there. And if they're dealing with hassle from trucks and hassle from people who haven't got the right papers, or just somebody whose brother's sister is uncle's in the government and therefore that gives them rights and all of this sort of stuff, you come along and you're polite and you're friendly and you're chilled and you've got the right paperwork and you're treating them with respect. They look at you as being a rather pleasant interlude in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's part of what makes it fun, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I can only imagine how much of a different experience it is for people like Dave, like the truck drivers. Because us on the bikes, we can just go straight to the front. I used to feel quite cheeky because some of these queues are like days long, aren't they? Just queues and queues of traffic, and you think you are not going to be there by the end of today. You're still going to be in a queue, and we turn up on the bikes and just ride straight to the front. And it's just accepted, isn't it?
It is. And if we don't do that, people are flagging us forward, aren't they? A number of times I've sort of sat and been respectful, sitting in the queue thinking, oh, this is going to be entertaining.
That's right.
And somebody's sort of waving you forward. And you're, what, me? Yes, you, go. And
even the people in the cars in front are like, why are you, just go, Paul, go. You're like, oh, okay, thanks.
Reminds me of a situation in the States. Breakdown, big breakdown and tough in the States, and I was on the freeway for a change, and all it was completely blocked. Now I was in a state where splitting lanes wasn't allowed, so I just sat there, and it was baking hot. It was 45 degrees in the shade, and I was sweating buckets, and I could hear all of the cars around me and the trucks with their air conditionings roaring and all of this sort of stuff. And it's stop, start. So I'm sitting on top of a very hot motorcycle. Yeah. And everybody is looking at me completely as if I'm total nutter. And I'm just thinking, yeah, okay, thanks, mates. Yeah, I'm boiling the bag. It's not very pleasant here. Thank you very much. And you're all thinking I'm weird because I'm on a motorcycle and I haven't got air conditioning. But what I didn't realize, they were looking at me completely weirdly because I hadn't understood that actually I should have been scooting down to the front and breaking the law and it would have been absolutely fine.
Yeah, nobody's bothered,
You learn.
Yeah, and all the customs guards are looking at you going, why isn't he coming forward, right? Strip search, what, you hiding?
Yep.
Right, so that is Patreon done. We're over onto, we made Instagram. We got to Instagram. So that's at TeapotOne Insta. First question we have here from official Mr. Fish, John. What's the most unexpected nice thing that has happened on your travels? To both of us. There's enough negativity in the world. So, the best thing that happened to you on your trip, apart from meeting Birgit.
No, that was my answer. You stole it now. I thought long and hard about this question. Thank you for it. I can't put my finger on one in particular because virtually every day something unexpected and nice happens. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why I think of myself as a motorcycle traveler, because there's so much joy out there. There's so much fun. It's just brilliant. Negativity. Okay, so you get your stuff up moments. But if you got your eyes open and your mindset right, there's good stuff happening all of the time. So I can't answer that. I can give you 100.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, there's no one thing. For me, I think the best thing from my entire trip was just how it changed me. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and my missus included, and said, "Oh, did you think I changed?" And a lot of people are like, "No, I don't think you've changed." But I myself feel differently about me now, I think, because of the trip. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest, for me, that's the biggest plus, is just that I'm much happier with who I am now than I was before the trip. I'm much more open to people than I was. I think just travel broadens the mind, doesn't it? And certainly did for me.
It really does. It's part of that knocking the sharp edges off thing that we learn who we are because we're facing so many situations that we've never faced before, and we've got to work it out. And there's nobody else going to do it for us. So we've got to get our thinking caps on and follow our instincts. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we get it wrong. Either way, we learn.
Yeah, and it's life, isn't it? It's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice one, John. Next one, S. Muston Photography. Hi, gents. Great podcast, Bruce. Thank you very much. My question to you both is, what is the most bizarre thing that's been offered to you by a random stranger you've met on the road?
Traveling in Africa, you get offered quite some weird things to eat. They didn't particularly faze me too much because having been born and brought up there, then I was already aware of them. But the first time somebody offered me roasted chimpanzee was a bit of a, oh gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
Wow.
Snake on a steak, that's quite interesting. So there was a
sounds like a bad film.
Shish kebab snake.
Wow.
Very tasty. He was just standing by the side of the road. He had two charcoal braziers. On one, he was cooking snake kebabs, and on the other, he was braising corn on the cob. And this was the first time that I had corn on the cob, which had a mixture of salt and piri red pepper. So the combination of those two things was very nice indeed. And snake's nice. I like it. It's good. Another gift, well, I suppose it was a virtual gift. It was an offer of a gift in a disco in Kenya. One of the prostitutes took a liking to me and told me that I was a very good dancer. Yeah. And she offered me something later.
And that's all we're going to say on that.
No, I was far too shy.
Of course you are, Sam. Of course you are. God, I've been trying to think. Random things. I did have a young lady from a petrol station offer to marry me in Colombia. That was an experience. Just you know how you see these videos of the petrol attendants in like South and Central America. They tend to be the women, like beautiful women, because it's to attract the customer in, isn't it? Come and fill up with fuel. And I saw that it was like a teenager's porn fantasy come true at this petrol station. There was the secretary, the mechanic, the nurse, all that sort of stuff. And this big 6 foot sort of leggy Colombian lady dressed as a very attractive secretary literally mounted my bike once I'd filled up with fuel and said, marry me, because she loved my Scottish accent. She was just, take me away and marry me. And I was just like, wow, this could go differently if I wasn't attached. But I think one thing that really sticks in my mind for my travel was just meeting a random person at a petrol station in Russia, and the guy would not have it that I was going to sleep that night in my tent in a field, and basically signed for me to follow him. And I'm assuming, I still to this day I wonder if that's what he meant, but I followed him back to his little wooden hut and went into his wooden hut, and his missus is there cooking, and the borscht comes out, the stew, and then the vodka comes out, and I spent the evening not speaking Russian. They didn't speak English, but we spent the evening chatting, and
nice.
Spent the night in their place, and in the morning left, and it was just a totally random experience that you look back and think, did that happen? How did that happen? But yeah, it was life on the road, isn't it?
It's another travel beauty. When you were just talking just now about the makeup on the lady at the Colombian petrol station, it popped another thought into my mind. I was on the island of Koh Phangan, which is just off the coast of Thailand, and it was very famous for its full moon parties. And full moon parties basically go on for about 3 days, and they're completely hedonistic. It's almost like the rest of the world doesn't exist. And if you want to do it, then you do it. And there are loads of drugs going around and all of this sort of thing. And the island's absolutely beautiful. It's exactly how you see islands in holiday brochures: white sand beach, palm trees, bamboo cabins, and all of this sort of thing. Anyway, the party was coming up, and the island was getting very full as a result. But we'd been there for about a week by this time, just chilling, enjoying the swimming and the snorkeling and so on. Anyway, I'm walking into the town, and this little man came up to me and he said, "Hey, mister, you want to buy face paint? I sell you very good face paint, fluorescent face paint." I was thinking, what? Where the hell is this coming from? It was only later on that I realized that he was. There were touts selling face paint around because the police would insert spies with film cameras, and they were filming people doing drugs and all of the rest of it. And the face paint, you could completely disguise yourself, and the fluorescent face paint, the cameras didn't like.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I just thought it was the thing you did, because I've seen loads of them do it. I just assumed it was the whole, like, their version of glow sticks. All right, okay, that makes sense. I didn't have you down as a hedonistic drug partying lunatic.
Oh no, absolutely not. No, I'm sober and serious.
The next Overland event we do could be quite different. Right, next one. Jim Morrison's bath water. If Sam could turn the clock back on his trip, what, if anything, would he change? Oh, that's a goodie.
I think it would be some... and straight away, I would do an off-road motorcycle riding course before I went. I didn't. I'd only been riding a motorcycle for 3 months. By the day I got to the edge of the Sahara, I passed my test 6 weeks before I got there. I didn't have a clue. And I have a back injury that's in part because I didn't have a clue. I didn't even know how to pick up my bike properly. I spent the first months in fear of the road instead of in respect of it, which eventually I learned. And as soon as I learned that the dirt roads weren't to be feared but to be respected, then I started hunting them out and started enjoying them. If I'd had a decent off-road training course before, then that's how I would have started the trip. So that is something that I would change, definitely.
Yeah, do you know, I mean, even to this day, I still haven't got a clue about riding off-road, really, to be perfectly honest. But I think for me, if I could change something, I'd probably try and take my time more and explore more than I did. You know, I don't like to have regrets in life, but I definitely think there's a lot of wasted opportunities on my trip, and I wish I'd spent longer in certain places and maybe not gone to a few, you know, not sacrificed just moving through one place to get to another, like explore that one more. Yeah, but you know, it's not the end of my days, is it? There's plenty of time. I can go back and do it another time, hopefully.
No, that's right, absolutely. And whatever happens, you're being led at the time by your instincts and the things that are influencing you, and that's all part of a journey, isn't it? Well, one of the reasons that I now travel with a motorcycle, because I've travelled on a bicycle, I've sailed, I've hitchhiked, I've hiked and bussed and trained and various other things, but I fell in love with motorcycling, and I use that phrase very comfortably, because of the freedom that it gave me. You know, you get a bus ticket and you wake up in the morning and that's the day that your bus goes. But the night before, you met somebody who was absolutely fascinating and would show you a part of the city and its history that you never would have known about had you not met this person. And you're faced on a tight budget between losing your bus ticket or taking advantage of this person. And sometimes I didn't make the right decision. With a motorcycle, I got no bus ticket, so of course I can stay. And I just love the flexibility that having a bike gives me.
It's the freedom, isn't it? Just the total freedom. Yep. Hodmeister09, this is for both of you. Where, of all the places you've travelled, would you like to take someone back to, and why? That is a good one.
'Tis. I think probably Ecuador and Colombia, because those two countries have a huge range of geography. Everything from the Amazon jungle to the Andes to volcanoes to plains, to coastline. There are still tribes that are remote that you can get to with some effort, and you can see still how life was led traditionally. The food in those two countries is absolutely fantastic. And I really enjoyed the people that we met there. I enjoyed the independence of so many of them and the vibrancy. And I would love to have the opportunity to show somebody that part of the world. I feel privileged that Birgit and I shared that part of the world together. So yeah, I'd love to take somebody back to that part of South America.
Yeah, I would definitely love to explore South America a lot more. I mean, I basically just tanked my way up the west to the old Pan American. I'd love to explore that a lot more. I would love to show my missus parts of Japan that I saw because I explored a lot all over Japan, and I would love to take Nikki there and let her see those parts, because my missus backpacked around the world, but she really only did Tokyo in Japan. And I was like, oh, you need to see, the rest of the place is just stunning. I really, really love Japan. Yeah, that's probably be for me. I would take my wife to Japan.
Nice one. I've never been to Japan, and I would love to go. And it's in part because of the way that you've described it in the past, that makes me want to go.
It's the history of the place. I mean, the people are so respectful and nice and polite and kind, but it's the history of the place. It's like in the UK, we've got Westminster Hall, 1,000 years old, and you think, my God, that's amazing. You're proud that you have history dating back to 1066, and sometimes even just before that. In Japan, they've got temples that are 4,500, 5,000 years old. You're like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. Yeah, beautiful place. Tour to Oz. Good day, Bruce and Sam. Wishing you both well. Knowing that Sam is the nicest man in motorcycling. To both of you, what, if anything, would you change back to what it was during your trip days that is simply not the same now? Oh. Wow. What's not the same now? Can you think of anything for this?
Yeah, I can. The first thing is I would love to know who hung that title on me, because it's very hard to live up to. You can go almost the length of Africa on the east side on asphalt now. Route 40 is well on the way to being asphalted, and so on. And there are many iconic roads that are now being asphalted. And I think that is absolutely fantastic for the local people, for them to be able to get their goods to market, to be able to get to hospital, or whatever else it may be that they've had to do on beaten up, badly potholed roads that become mud slicks in the rainy season and so on. To be able to do that on asphalt now, how wonderful is that? Birgit and I got talking to a chap in northern Uganda, and they don't have buses, or they didn't have buses up there. What they had was pickup trucks. And you would pile maybe 20 people into this pickup truck, and people would be hanging out over the edge of it, and you would see them hammering through these potholes. But if you broke a leg, that was how you got to hospital, in the back of one of these things.
Yep.
And just the thought of being able to do that on an asphalt road, how wonderful is that? But for we overlanders, it's kind of a shame, really, that these iconic roads are so straightforward to travel in one way. But in another way, people with less ability on motorcycles can now travel through some incredibly stunning parts of the world. And the sideways turning thought with this is, look, if you really want the dirt roads,
you'll find them.
Then, 50 kilometers off to the right and hang a left, you know, you'll probably be on the same sort of road to the road that was.
What I liked was, like, certainly in Russia, even 2013 when I crossed Russia, although they said you could cross the entire country on asphalt, well, you couldn't. There was still, even on like their version of the M1, the main road, there were still sections of maybe up to 40, 50, maybe even a bit more kilometres of dirt. You know, it's a road, but they just haven't. They've either taken the tarmac off or they haven't put the tarmac on it yet. So I like that you were just forced into it. You know, whether you wanted to or not, that was what you had to do. And the thought of doing a round the world trip and never having that, you know, never having that position where you've got no other option but to take the dirt road, that's quite sad, isn't it? And I think you're always going to get it.
I agree, because it is those moments when you find out who you are.
Yeah,
those moments where you're pushed into something that is just completely alien to you and your experiences.
Yeah,
you have no choice, so you get on with it. And the more times you get on with something, the more you realize how much you can actually get on with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if when something does happen, like you get a puncture or you fall off or you drop your bike or whatever happens, you realize, I can deal with this. I can actually deal with it. Okay, so you're not bothered about it the next time, are you? And it equips you for life because things go wrong.
See, Mark Fulcher's going to appreciate this, the philosophy of life on the road.
He will. Where's he going next? He told me where he's off to. I think he's off to Holland, actually, so he's not going to be slumming it by any stretch of the imagination. He works all over the place. He spent, I think, a couple of years in India with his work.
Brilliant.
He wasn't a fan of the Indian toilets, I'll tell you that. Where were we? Changing to what? My answer for that, I would say Thailand. I've heard Thailand is now very hard to get your bike into. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm hearing, and it just wasn't when I went through it. And the thought of people being put off taking their bike in there, you know, riding from like the UK and not doing Thailand, I just think, oh, what a shame.
Will Bricks talks about this in his new book, East to Zero, which has only been out a couple of weeks, but he talks about the issue with that, and he had to hire a guide to get him through Thailand. Yeah.
Why is that? Why have they changed it over there?
Well, there are a lot of rumours about this, but a lot of them come back to Chinese people were illegally importing vehicles into Thailand and selling them. Right. So the Thai government was forced into the position where they basically had to say, any foreign vehicle, now we've got to make life difficult. And because their vehicular importation economy was just being completely undermined. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, overlanders have been lumped in with that. And it's a bit of a shame that they've said all vehicles. But in the end, if there's a loophole somewhere, somebody is going to find it and take advantage of it if it's food on the table for their families. But yeah, it is a real shame. And I think so many motorcycle overlanders were going through Thailand, it will have an effect on their economy. In the long term, well, hey, now there are a lot of guides that didn't have jobs before. So
I suppose so, yeah, true. I look back, and I wanted to go into Vietnam. So I went through Laos, and I just wanted to nip across the border into Vietnam and do that, but you couldn't do it, So I suppose it's no different, is it? I want to go in Myanmar, and you couldn't at the time. So I suppose it's, like you said, there's always ways around stuff, isn't there? I think where there's a will, there's a way. You'll figure it out. Bruce,
you should read Will's book. It's one of the most challenging motorcycle overlanding books I've ever read. Wow. I've got to write a review about it, and it's probably the hardest motorcycle travel book review I've ever had to write. It's going to take me some time to do it, but it's a fantastic book. If you don't want to just read about the physical journey, if you want to read about the mental journey at the same time, my goodness, there's some thought processes in this, and I found myself absolutely exhausted by the time I'd read it, because my brain was just absolutely pummeled by the journey and the thought processes. It's fascinating.
What's it called again?
East to Zero.
East to Zero. Right, I'll hunt that out. All right, lovely. Is that available? Who publishes that? Is that just available
on Amazon?
Is it? Oh, excellent.
Yep.
Right, okay. East to Zero. Right, I'll check that one out. Next one, Dave Henderson, 63. How does Sam... we've already covered this. How does Sam think COVID will affect world adventure travel for the future? Will things be a lot harder? Well,
we're all stuck. It's doom and gloom. It's disaster.
We're all doomed. Yeah, we've already chatted about that, haven't we? Right, so to us, got another question to both. If you could pillion anyone on a section of your journey, who would you take and why? We kind of covered that again before. Well, no, that wasn't pillion, was it? That was travel
No, it
with
wasn't.
somebody. So
Pillion
pillion.
is yeah. You're looking at me. Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
I would take somebody who would love to travel but physically can't. So perhaps
nice.
somebody who has been disabled in some way, be it from birth or from a habit, something that's happened in life, because I can give somebody an opportunity by me being fit enough to be able to do it. And I think that would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Where would I take them? I would quite like to take them to Namibia. It's a starkly beautiful country. It's a country that somebody who perhaps hasn't traveled much before won't find it too difficult to get on in. And I'm thinking silly things like beer that tastes great, and some of the world's best cream cakes are in Namibia. But no, seriously, fantastic roads, both asphalt roads and dirt roads, and riding pillion. You could comfortably take even a novice pillion on a lot of those roads and take them through some magic scenery. I think of Namibia as being stark, majestic scenery. But of course, up in the north, you've also got Etosha, the national park, and all of those sorts of things. So I think it would be a great part of the world to take a pillion to.
Definitely. It was Bernard, wasn't it, that took his missus who was blind. Kathy. He took Kathy who was blind, and he did it in a sidecar, wasn't it? He took. Was it pillion? Was she pillion?
Yeah, she was pillion.
Yeah.
And Bernard and Kathy's book is one of the gems. It's called
beautiful.
Touching the World.
Yeah.
And if anybody hasn't read this book, then get it. Touching the World. It's a cracking read. And Kathy's completely blind. Now, when I was reading it, I kept on thinking two things. One, Bernard, his courage and determination to make this dream come alive for somebody who was disadvantaged like Kathy was. And Kathy's strength of character to be doing things like sitting in Indian traffic with no idea what was coming, but just this constant barrage of noise and the knowledge that something was coming and every second. It's an incredible book. Touching the World. Lovely. Super.
Yeah. It's well worth checking out, folks. Beautiful story. Did I answer that? I don't think I haven't got any set actual person in mind, but I love what you just said about taking somebody who perhaps couldn't or wouldn't travel, unless they were offered to go pillion with me. I can't think of anyone in particular, but somebody that would maybe open things up for them. Nice idea. Robert Newman, 27. Hey gents, hope you're both doing well. Question for both. I get really annoyed in my lorry when I come to a roundabout, see a car to my right about to enter the roundabout, not indicating. What's that saying? Not indicating, so it's obviously going straight over, so I must stop and give way. Only then to watch them turn left without indicating still. That really cheeses my Branston pickle. What do other road users do that really winds you up? So what winds you up on the road?
When I read this question, Robert, I grinned because I can see, and I loved your turn of phrase, Branston pickle. Lovely, super. When I'm in this country, I very quickly fall into the trap of being annoyed by things like that for a moment. And I guess that you drive for a living. I have a friend, Dave, who used to drive for a living, and you could almost see his blood pressure raise when he moved towards his work vehicle. And traveling with him was a bit like probably flying behind a Second World War fighter pilot, in the back seat. because that was how he used to drive, and the language was quite impressive sometimes.
Everything's a battle.
Yeah, exactly. For an overlander, once you have ridden in Lima, Mombasa, Nairobi, Bangkok, places like that where most people drive like that anyway, it starts to phase you less. But like I said, once I'm back here and I start seeing it, because they're breaking the law. Stuff them. They shouldn't be doing that. It's very inconsiderate. It's damn rude of them. And of course, I started to get a little bit niggled as well. But they're actually just reminders to me that I need to pay attention, because not everybody around me is paying attention.
Yeah, that's kind of how. Well, I mean, I've been knocked off my bike quite a few times in the last 5 years now, but certainly when I'm abroad, I always sort of ride, not expecting another road user to do anything in particular, always expect the unexpected. But I think I've definitely fallen into the trap over here of going, well, that's not what you do. So you almost expect. I don't go as far as to think that car up ahead won't turn across my path because they've seen me coming, because you just don't do that, do you? I always treat a car like it's not going to do what I expect it to do, if you know what I mean. No, but that's because I've been knocked off. You learn from the experience, don't you? Yep. So now, mobile phones, that pees me off. People using a phone when they're driving, that, even in other countries, that annoys me.
Me too. But that's really, it's absolutely not necessary. If you've got a phone call to make or a phone call to receive, find a flipping lay-by. Yeah. What right have you got to put other people's lives at risk? Sorry, I'm not going to get on my soapbox here, but I've seen it so many times.
Aye. With
the miles that I do, where somebody else is on their phone and putting somebody else's life at risk, and you just think to yourself, how? Yeah. Anyway. Sorry. You can delete all of that, because that was me. That was me getting on a soapbox about something, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who use their mobile phones, and they're very responsible as they do it.
But it's when you go to another country, and like, say you get in a taxi from the airport or something, you just get in a taxi, and the taxi driver's on his phone the entire way, nipping in and out of traffic, and you're just like, oh my god. Anyway. Right, so where were we? Chris, VW88. I want to do some UK touring this year. What's best for bike security overnight? I don't want to be carrying a heavy chain lock around. Is a disc lock enough? What did you both use? I didn't use any bike security at all on my trip. At all. Nothing. Did you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. No, very much. Funnily enough, I was told just before I started the trip, if you make it across Europe without your motorcycle being stolen, you'll make it around the rest of the world. That was very reassuring, seeing as I was only going to spend a few weeks in Europe, and I didn't know if I'd be coming back. So I carried a D-lock, an ABUS D-lock, with my bike, because I knew there would be times when I was going to have to walk away from the bike, and I was just going to have to leave it unattended. And so I wanted to make sure that I was doing what was necessary for it still be there. I wanted to be able to walk away and not be worrying about it. Mm-hmm. And I did use it always. Well, always. Hang on a minute. Come on, Sam, be honest here. There were one or two times when you didn't. And what did you do? Yeah, you walked away and spent the day wondering whether it was going to be there when you got back. So yeah, an ABUS D-lock I carried, but yeah, it was a heavy thing, and I debated all of the time. God, all this extra weight. I didn't use what's it called? The lock that goes in the brake disc, a disc lock, because I am a bit of a pea brain, and I'm sure that I would have kept on forgetting that it was there and tried to ride away, in spite of having a fluorescent cable running up to my handlebars. I understand what you mean about not wanting to carry a big chain, cumbersome, lots of weight. Anybody that is that keen on stealing your motorcycle is going to come up with an angle grinder anyway, aren't they?
Yep.
If we stay in hotels, then we always leave our bikes parked with a motorcycle cover on. Most of the time we're camping though, so it's next door to our tent, so we're not really sweating, but I still put the lock on then. I've been hearing quite a lot recently about something that is called a light lock, LITELOCK.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of a delve into that, and they look as if they would be pretty good at stopping the instinctive, reasonably well-equipped thief. So it might be something like that would do you. But in Europe, I never leave my bike not locked. It used to be in the States that you could leave your bike not locked. I was lent a Kawasaki Versi 650, pristine, ton of modifications on it, and I looked at it and I couldn't even make the steering head lock work because of some of the mods that have been made on it. So I said, well, have you got a lock? Oh, this is the States, you don't need one. When I talked to this chap 4 years later, it was, oh, no, always lock the bikes.
Right.
Times have changed.
Yeah. I mean, I think I probably took a little disc lock with a forget-me-not thing, you know, the thing you talked about, the brightly coloured spring thing that goes to your handlebars. I think I took one with me, but I genuinely can't remember ever using it on my trip. In the UK, if I'm into London, then yeah, 100%. I definitely, absolutely, the bare minimum is the big lock with a big padlock. If I can, I'll park it underground. But as you said, if they want to get through it, they will get through it, and it literally takes 20, 30 seconds to get through a good lock with an angle grinder. They'll get through. So I think the best idea for security is just make it as unattractive or as much of a pain in the arse to the potential thief as you can. So your bike is less easy to nick than the other poor buggers that's next to it. That's ultimately that's all you can do, really, isn't it? Because there's nothing, so. There's no fail-safe out there.
One of the things that you can do if you're staying in a hotel is that you can ask the receptionist if you can leave your bike parked within view of the reception desk.
Yeah.
I normally do that in the States, either outside my room, because of course a lot of the motels in the States have got rooms that open straight out into the car park, so I can see it. But if failing that, then outside reception, and that gives peace of mind. And I've done that a few times in the UK too. And most receptionists seem to be happy for the novelty value to have a gorgeous motorcycle to be staring out at.
Absolutely. And I found, certainly once you're overlanding, you're sort of out of Europe, a lot of the hotels, they would tell you to bring your bike in to the hotel. Yeah. And I even had it in Texas when I crossed from Mexico into Texas. Excuse me, and I stayed at a Motel 6, which is like the cheap, really cheap motels. And the young lad behind the desk, when I got my room, he basically said, "Oh, I'll give you a room on the ground floor, because that's where all the bikers go on the ground floor." And I was like, "Oh, thanks very much, cheers." And he said, "Yeah, so you can get your bike in." And I sort of laughed, thinking, "What? No, you're all right." And he said, No, take your bike into your room. That's what the bikers do." I was like, what sort of place is this? So I stayed at Motel 6s for most of America, actually. If I could see a Motel 6, I'd stay there. And just literally take your bike into the room.
Top tip with Motel 6, you probably came across this, but bearing in mind the age group of most motorcyclists statistically, if you're over 60, you can get 10% off in a Motel 6.
Can you?
So you just sign up, and there you are, Bob's your uncle. And quite often, if you book in advance with a Motel 6, you can get a further discount. I use them sometimes on the tours all over there, because when I'm not wild camping, I need somewhere to have a shower and I need some Wi-Fi. Yeah,
that's exactly. I think I rarely camped, actually, by the time I got to the States. I was just, I'm over that now. Give me some luxury. And yeah, Motel 6, it was cheap as chips. Most places it was cheap as chips, and got everything you need in it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Gujuko, GJUKO. Great show. Keep the amazing work. Question for you this time, Bruce. Would you go again on a trip around the world, but this time with your missus? And do you think she would like to? Well, I spoke about that with Mrs. Teapot when she came on the podcast, and I think we're sort of... Some parts would be good and other parts wouldn't, because we're both quite independent people, and I think we'd probably travel differently. But then, as you said, Sam, it's probably a nice learning experience for us to travel together. Having said that, we have done. We've done a road trip. We tend to do that most years, but in a car, we'll go to the States, hire a big truck, and then just hit the road for 10 days, 2 weeks, no plan. And I thought that would be horrific, to be perfectly honest with you, because I quite like my own space. But it was actually really good. Really enjoyed it. So I think yes, if Nikki did want to do a round the world trip, yeah, I would take her, I think. And do you think she would like to? Yes, but we'd need to make sure we gave each other space when we needed it. Definitely. But that's life in general, isn't it? That's a relationship.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, I said all these nice things about Birgit, but she'll say, well, if I can't ride my own bike, I'm not going traveling with you. I need my space. And that is one of the things that meant that we could actually travel well together, was because we were on separate bikes. Our personalities are both too strong to have been that close to each other all of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, my missus often talks about, she's done her CBT, but that's now run out. But she does still talk about one day maybe getting her own bike licence. And I think that's becoming more attractive to her as time goes on. Well, it'd be interesting. I don't really know. So go on.
Well, think about what we were talking about earlier on. Smaller bikes are so much more capable now. The Honda CB500, for example. What a great little bike that is. You can do an awful lot on that bike.
Well, I had the little Synuses, didn't I? I took the wee Sinus 125cc things away, and I'm a 20 stone fat lad, but I had a great time on those bikes. I can't remember the last time I laughed so much, and it was great fun. Loved it. That's an interesting one, that question, because I think I started answering the question thinking, no, not at all. And then by the end of it, I've talked myself into it. So who knows? We'll see. We've just adopted a little rescue pup she's coming to us in May. So I think that's going to change life quite a bit. We'll see how things go then. Right, so that is all the Instagram questions. Move across onto Facebook. First one, who do we have here? Rich the Wood. Sam, knowing that you're not the type of person that necessarily needs or wants material things to feel fulfilled in life, what one bike thing would you spoil yourself with if it means... What bike thing would you spoil yourself with if the means were not an issue? Just a gluttonous choice, not a bike for any particular purpose. Thank you both for what you're doing for the biking community. Well, thank you. So I think he's talking about a bike here then. So money, no object, pure want. What bike could you get?
Rich, I know exactly what I would have, and I've thought about this a lot. I would like a custom-built Harley-Davidson bagger, midnight blue metallic paint with neon electric blue underlighting, chrome spoked wheels with thin tyres, and an absolutely superb music system.
Not that you've thought about it much.
Can you imagine me having something as nuts as that? I mean, would I ride it? Hell yes, why not? I'll have a go. But no, seriously, I kind of hanker after a BMW R9T, the Urban GS.
Yeah.
I don't have fancy tastes. So, Rich, you've read me quite nicely. But the R9T, I think, is a very tasty looking little, in inverted commas, bike, which has a lot of capability. I think I could have some real fun on that. Is it in my budget now? No, it's not. So that means for me, then it falls in with what you're talking about. I hope that's all right.
Oh, definitely. Have you not? I mean, surely. I mean, you're like brand ambassador status for BMW. Surely.
No, not really. No.
That's insane. That is insane. But then I suppose people say that about me and Suzuki, and I cannot get a single bike off of Suzuki, even to do a review. I get nothing from them at all. But I'm surprised BMW haven't reached out.
Well, I have a nice relationship with BMW in that in the States I'm on their preferred presenter list, which is fantastic. And BMW, with the different books, they've always helped me with funding by buying a page of advertising, which has been fantastic. But I've never actually asked BMW for anything, mostly because I haven't needed anything. So if the few companies that I have worked with over the years, it's been because I've needed something. And therefore, if it's been on a review basis, I've been able to do a review because I'm definitely going to use it. Your life and what you're doing as a business is in a way quite different to what I'm doing, in that I'm a bit of a cheapskate and nobody would give me credibility anyway.
You're selling yourself well short there, Sam.
I mean, I mentioned Held jackets earlier on. Held and I have got a loose relationship, and if I need a jacket or a pair of trousers or something like that, then they'll say to me, well, what do you need? Well, this is what I need. Okay, why don't you try one of these on the condition that you write a review? All right, well, I'll write a review, and I have to do this so long as you're prepared to accept that if I don't like it, I'm going to say so, and I'm going to say why.
Yeah.
Avon tyres have been like that with me as well, and that's the way that I prefer to work, because, or that works for me, because I can just be completely honest. And but I know you are anyway, so I don't know why I'm rattling in this direction, because you always are. Your reviews are always spot on, because you do give a product a fair balance.
That's what I always make out to companies. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, there's a delay there. That's what I always say to companies when they say, you know, can you take this and feature it in a vid? And I'm like, well, I will, but you know, I'm not just going to say something's good just because somebody's given me a product to review. Be prepared that I'll be critical where I think it's critical, and I'll give you praise where I think there's praise. And it's what really, it's like someone flicking my testicles when they turn round to me and they question my integrity in the comments. And I know I shouldn't read the comments, but I do. When someone questions your integrity and you're like, that's the one thing, like, I will vehemently protect, is my integrity, because it's all I've got at the end of the day. So, No, I completely get you, and I think that the day you lose your integrity, then that's the day you should be stopping doing reviews anyway. And I see reviews from some people, and I just think, hang on a minute, you haven't even used this. Yep.
You don't. I've tried that, and I know that it's bloody tight under the arms.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to wear it because of that. And you've just said it's the best thing since sliced bread, and I just think, well, what's the point in that?
Sam, it really annoys me in the bike industry. I see, especially during COVID, because obviously a lot of press teams they're not doing press launches, but now they are, and I've just been to a BMW one, and you see it. How little time people spend on bikes and then go and give a review on it. And I'm like, you've ridden that to a car park. You know what I mean? It's like, you haven't done anything, but they're giving a vid review on it. And you're like, how can you... Like, to me, I don't even see how I can review a bike on a couple of hours riding, because to me, that's no different than a test ride. To review a bike for me, I'm like, I need like 1,000 miles or more on that bike. I need to enjoy it and get over that initial, wow, this is amazing, I'm on a brand new spanking bike. You need to get over that. Or like case of the Africa Twin, didn't really like it to begin with, and then the more time I spent on it, the more I got to grips with the bike and started enjoying different parts of it.
No, it's really important. You know, I did a review on a jacket one time. It wasn't a Held jacket, but there was something that I really, really didn't like about it, and I was the only one that was saying this jacket has got a real problem. And I had one or two people turn around to me at events and say, Sam, what planet are you living on? Well, actually, I'm living on the planet of, I tried that for 6 months and I wore it and I lived with it, and I didn't like it. But anyway, we've shot off at a tangent. I don't get very much sponsorship because I haven't needed it so far. But the adverts that go in my books, for example, obviously I'm paid for those, and they're really, really important. Printing a book is such an expensive thing to do, as you know.
Absolutely.
And so the help from that is phenomenal. But I only approach companies whose gear I respect and have worked with and have used. So it's also an opportunity for me to give a bit of a leg up to a mega giant.
Yeah, and I think most people out there they're perfectly aware that you need advertising, you need sponsorship to for certain things to happen, for like the book and stuff. As you said, producing a book and publishing a book costs a hell of a lot of money, doesn't it? So you need to cover that somehow. Anyway, let's not fall down into that trap. Jim Wood. Bruce and Sam, how important is your mobile phone when travelling? I use mine for everything and wonder if service is good and they're as useful as normal around the world. Would you rely on it for navigation?
Nice question. Completely relevant. Yes, I would. I could stop there, but I'm going to say why. Yes, I would. You can get navigation apps to go on your phone, such as Copilot, which is what I use, which means that you don't have to have internet connection for it to work. And that means that once you've got the thing on your phone, so long as you've got a GPS locator turned on your phone, then you can use this without source.
Yeah, download maps.
And it's just superb. It's never ever let me down. It's sometimes got me to within 20 yards of where I need to be going, and that's been a bit of a chore because the final 20 yards have been a little bit of a mystery, but hey, life's an adventure. I can deal with that. I don't use it very much a lot of the time because I quite like getting lost. I use it when I've got a destination that I have to get to. I use it on time. I use it when I've got a presentation going on, for example, or I need to find a hotel or whatever else it is. But the rest of the time it's turned off, and I love maps. I would never use any navigation device all on its own without maps too. Maps to me are, they're where adventures begin. They're art, their history, their geography. They're the whole lot on a piece of paper. Love them. Mobile phones, the ones that are around nowadays are so good. They are fantastic tools for travel, filming, photographs. Some of the world's photography competitions are being won now by mobile phone photographs against SLR photographs.
Yeah.
They're that good. It's your office. It's all of those sorts of things. So yes, they are absolutely fantastic. They have their downsides in that, of course, they're not necessarily waterproof, but you can get waterproof covers for them. Most mobile phones don't like sitting in the heat for hour after hour and will turn themselves off at the most inconvenient moments. Ask me how I know.
Been there.
And they're also vulnerable to vibration, but there are systems that you can get which absorb the vibration and cut out that problem. So from that point of view, yes. Do I travel solely with a phone? Now not. I bought myself a second-hand Garmin, which I still haven't got a clue how to use, and I think the previous owner has left their password in it, and I can't get in touch with them, so I don't know how to get past that. But hey, I'm a technological anyway, so I'll find a way. But I mean, of course, that's waterproof and it copes quite fine in the heat. But yes, I would quite happily go around the world using a phone, so long as I had the right navigation kit set up on it.
Yeah.
And there are so many good ones out there now that you don't need to be logged in for.
Yeah, I'll not mention one of my channel sponsors, but they are one. So if you watch the channel, you'll know. Well, the TeapotOne channel, you'll know who I'm talking about. But I'm the same. I think they're fantastic. They do an amazing job. But I wouldn't rely totally on it. I'd always, as you said, have that backup. I would have either the GPS or a map. I would have something. Not for mainland Europe, because I'm never going to get lost in mainland Europe. But if I was going somewhere I didn't know, then I would always make sure I've got at least a paper map to give me an idea of that country, that area.
Yeah.
There's things like, when you're away, like if I don't have my phone, or let's just say the phone's packed up, this has happened to me when I've been relying on my phone, even going around Spain. The power connection from my bike or from my battery pack, for whatever reason, that's died on me, so the phone runs out of battery. So then you've got no sat nav on your phone anymore. what I've done before, literally, is I know I need to go east or I know I need to go west. You look at the sun. It's just basics, isn't it? It's like, okay, look at the shadows, where the shadows fall and what time of day it is. Sun rises in the east, it sets in the west, so that'll give you an idea if you're heading north, south, east or west. And if you know that you're the road that you're on is running north and south, well, you know, okay, I'll just sit on this road and eventually, you know, if like for me, mainland Europe, I'll know that if I've got Madrid behind me and I'm heading north, well, worst case scenario, I keep going till it gets wet and then I know I'm at the very top of Spain. You know, it's just simple as that, isn't it?
I like the navigation with using the sun and with using maps and those sorts of things. One of the things that I always fear with too much technology is that you're turning half of your brain off.
Yes.
That means that you're dulling down your instincts and your senses, and it's those things that are pointing out to you that so much of the fascination factor on the road.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we'll turn the GPS on when we're getting out of a town, getting into a town, but the rest of the time, quite often, we'll just turn it off and we'll just use the sun.
It's like the technology turns off the logical part of your brain, and you stop thinking about things logically. Like you just rely on what's on that screen, don't you? And yeah.
It's just like this, isn't it?
It is,
just like this. And
you know what GPS is like when you get into towns and built up areas. You do one left, right, and all of a sudden it's lost where you are. There's no GPS signal, and you're done then, aren't you? So fun and games.
Just one other comment on that. Mm-hmm. If anybody is thinking about using their phones for navigation, iPhone 6, for example, they are so cheap secondhand now, and Copilot works incredibly well. So why buy a modern phone to be bounced around in all weathers on your bike? Get yourself a really cheap second-hand one and use that for navigation, and then keep your decent phone for everything else nice and safe and sound, and also to back up if something does go wrong with the one that you're using for navigation. Yeah, great ideas. There's a lot of people doing that because of those vibration issues that you were talking about that are affecting a lot of the new iPhones, 11s, 12s. We are on 12, aren't we? iPhone 12? Yeah, we are. A lot of them are getting the cameras affected by the vibration off of the bike. Now, some people are saying it's to do with a certain frequency, actually, on the bike. But anyway, a lot of people are doing exactly as Sam just said and just buying a cheap smartphone and use that for the bike purely for navigation. Yeah, nice one. Sorry, I was battering through these because we have 4 questions left on Facebook, and then we've managed to do everything, but we're going to be over 3 hours. Are you okay with this, Sam? Oh, absolutely fine. Lovely. I mean, the guys have sent in such great questions. They are. They're great. Yeah, and I'm sure we could spend twice as long answering a lot of these, but 3 hours. Wow. Georgie Sabev, brilliant. Well done, Bruce. There were many guests on the podcast. You talked about coming for another one. Sam is really worth it. It was like It was like therapy listening to the episode. Cheers. Cheers, Georgie. So it wasn't really a question. It's just really nice comment. Cheers. Thanks, mate. Yeah, good on you. Glad you enjoyed it, man. Lee M. Gardner. Given the podcast listeners' penchant for asking toilet stories, ask Sam how much he would have paid for a packet of Imodium when he had to run naked through the hostel hallways when he had the shits. Lee, we've never met, but I know you well enough now to say trust you. Lee's referring to a story out of Into Africa, the first book, so the first year going down through Africa, and I'd made it into Ethiopia, and I was traveling with an English couple, Mike and Sally. They were 2 up on one of the first years of R80 GSs. And we'd made it to the what was once the capital city of Abyssinia. Ethiopia was called Abyssinia back in those days. And we treated ourselves to a nice, expensive hotel, 3-star, excellent, comparison to some of the places we've been staying. Yeah, had a roof and everything. Absolutely. But Gondar's really high. It's about 4,600 meters, something like that. And we'd sort of got there fairly gently, so I didn't think the altitude was bothering me that much, but it was. I was quite headachy, and we spent a day wandering around and exploring, and it was a fascinating place to explore. But we've been riding hard and probably not drinking enough for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And when we got there, drank a few beers, had a few meals that were perhaps not quite from places that we knew better than to eat from. And that night, while I was asleep, and anybody who's got a weak stomach doesn't need to listen to this bit because it's graphic. That night, without me being aware of it, I messed myself in the bed.
Oh no!
I didn't even know. But I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning with the sensation that I was about to mess myself. That was when I discovered that I had, but wasn't going to do it anymore. Now, the toilets and showers were down the corridor in this place. So I just leapt stark as out of the bed, ran down the corridor, squatted over the toilet. Total exhaustion. I was so ill, I could hardly squat. Without falling over. And all of the time that I'm doing that, I'm not thinking about how ill I'm feeling. I'm thinking, jeepers, did I flick the lock on the bedroom door when I left? It's going to be closed when I get back.
Oh no!
Fortunately, by the time I staggered back there, I had flicked the switch.
Wow.
The basin was a very busy place for the next hour. But thank you for that reminder, Lee. That's very kind of you. Sometimes shit happens.
Literally, yes, absolutely. I remember I've spoke about it on this podcast before. I managed to do the full house one time. I was in Indonesia, crossing Indonesia. And I turns out I'd got dengue fever. I didn't know at the time, but I was just totally wiped out. And I was riding along. It's 100% humidity. It's baking hot, 40 odd degrees. I'm in my leathers on the bike, and I thought I'm going to throw up. And I literally just managed to pull over, and I vomited in my lid. But at the same time, it came out the other end. So I'm literally stood there. I've even felt I've got a piece to camera where I'm just like, I'm not feeling it today. And that's because I've just gone through, threw up on my lid, standing there in my leather suit thinking, I just want to be somewhere else now, please. This is not good.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Life on the road, isn't it?
Down here.
No,
yeah.
No.
I mean, it's those times, isn't it, that are actually really important that you have them. If you don't have them, then you've not reached one of those extremes of the journey.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Although it's not pleasant at the time, it is funny afterwards. I mean, you were laughing at me as I was telling that story just then. Probably other listeners are having a laugh at my expense too. And looking back, it was funny. But I still remember wobbly feeling, thinking, can I hold myself up over this hole in the floor?
Oh, horrible. Toilets in some parts of the world, you're just like, I understand why people just go out into the woods. Some of the toilets are just horrendous, aren't they? What else have we got here? Tim Parsons, another top podcast to listen to. Cheers, Tim. Glad you're enjoying it. Or will be enjoying it, hopefully. Paul Webb. Oh, this is the last one. Paul Webb, what's your favourite colour and why? And what's your favourite town in England? Okay, favourite colour.
Okay, favourite colour. Summer sky blue, variations of, because I love being outside in the summer, and that the days get that particular shade of blue that you just want to be out underneath. For me, it's a sign of freedom. It's a sign of promise. It's a sign of being on an adventure when I'm out underneath the sky like that. Love it. Super.
Yep. I'm blue, same as they call it royal blue. It's the blue that's in the St Andrews flag. Thinking about it, it probably is because it's the St Andrews flag, but I've always just loved that deep, like the top of your poster behind you, that top deep blue. Oh yeah, like that.
Well spotted. Those are the sorts of blues that I'm talking about, and that's
nice.
Exactly why they're in that graphic.
Nice. Yeah. Same as me, blue. And what's your favourite town in England?
I can't answer that.
No.
There are so many towns in this tiny little group of islands. So I'm going to make it not only England, sorry, that just are incredible, fascinating places with beautiful architecture and interesting people. And, I found that really difficult. I mean, I live in Exeter, which I think of as being an overgrown town rather than a city. And I live here for a lot of reasons which might answer the question. And the first is the communications to get here and get away from it are absolutely fantastic. It's small. From my flat at the top of an old Victorian building, I can see green fields on two sides of the city. It's, like I say, an overgrown town. Mm-hmm. Everything that I really need is here. I can walk to it. Yet I can ride out of the city in 10 minutes and be on the open road. I love the fact that it's close to the sea. I like the Devon rolling red earth landscape. The tiny little thatched cottage villages that surround, and all of those sorts of things. In all, it's a very nice place to come home to. So, but favourite, there are so many good ones in this land of ours.
Absolutely. I found, I don't know about you, but I found like the world trip gave me a newfound appreciation for what we have here in the UK, and I've just thought. It made me realise we're such a small place in the UK. You know, even with all four countries together, we're such a small landmass compared to other countries and places in the world. Yet we're so diverse. You know, literally, you can go half an hour down the road and the accents change, the look of the countryside changes. You know, the cultures change, and it's made me think there's so much to see right here on my own doorstep that I've never bothered going to have a look at, and I keep wanting to. It's what I wanted to do last year, was get out around the UK and not been able to. So it's something I really want to do post COVID, when freedom returns, is explore our own shore more.
Well, I hope our paths cross along the way somewhere, because I would love to do that too. And definitely. I suspect that we've got a lot of kindred spirits who are watching and listening to this, because I think everybody's been paying an awful lot more attention to what's on our own doorstep. Yeah. And there is some real magic here, isn't there?
Absolutely. And it's going to be a lot of local businesses that are going to need our help more than ever after this. So, I'd rather be spending my money if I can here. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, that is us, Sam. That is 3 hours and 10 minutes. And we've managed to get through.
For everybody. Sorry, guys.
Far from it, mate. You more than anyone else that's been on, I've had people going, when is part two coming? When is part two coming? Nice. So thank you very much for coming back on. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, well, I'm honoured. It's I always enjoy chatting, and like I said earlier, the questions that everybody's been sending in, fantastic.
Definitely, and I look forward to being able to do this in person one day, someday, soon, hopefully. Sam, do you have any shout outs, any plugs that you want to make, anything like that?
I do, please.
Yes, feel free.
I want some thank yous. First of all, thank you, Bruce, for having me back on the show.
Pleasure.
I really enjoy sitting nattering with you, and reading the feedback and everybody from the last time we were on was just really nice to see. So thank you. Thanks to everybody for listening in, and thanks for the questions. I've written these down because having a brain about the size of a pea, I forget stuff if I don't write them down. Thank you for everybody who connected on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram after the last show. And I have seen quite a few new people pop up in the run up to this as well. So that's great. Thank you very much for connecting. Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're up to too. I'd like to thank all of the people from along the way who shared their journeys and their lives with me and with us, because it is always the people, for me, that make a journey a wonderful place to be. Thank you for everybody who made my books happen, and that's Birgit, of course, Paul, who edited, and Peter, who edited, and Phil, who designed, and Nikki, who proofread, and Ian, who did the website, and there are so many more people that I can mention that made the books happen. What a great bunch of people. Now, with Bruce's permission, I've got a little special going on for anybody who has been listening to the episode and is interested. I'd like to do 10% off on my books and T-shirts for you guys. So through the rest of March and April, just go to my website. Hopefully Bruce put that in the show notes.
Certainly, yeah. All down below.
Great. And just go to the bookshop and you'll find the goodies there. And we just go through, select what you want. And when you get to the payout, put in, of course, TeapotOne. Uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter, but all one word. And the 10% is off and is yours.
Fantastic.
I hope you find something you enjoy. Thank you
very much for that. Cheers, Sam. Folks, if you have not read any of Sam's books, then, how can you not feel better about life having listened to Sam for the last 3 hours? Well, imagine that in the written word about his incredible, travels that he spent 8 years travelling. So get yourself across to the website, it'll be down below, and pick up one, if not all of his books. Sam, thank you so much for coming back on, mate. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure we will do this again, and I can't wait to do it in person, as we said.
Yep, too right. Brilliant. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
No bother, mate. Love to burg it as well. And take care. We'll see you soon. Folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. If you've stuck around till the end here, thank you so much. As Sam has said, thanks so much for engaging with us through the comments and the questions and everything. You lot really do make these podcasts happen, really, because I would just be sat here for like 20 minutes thinking, what am I going to talk about? So it's your questions that fuel everything here. Folks, look after yourselves. Remember to give us a little like, a share, whatever. Give a little comment down below. Tell me what you think. Look after yourselves. Keep looking after those that you love. Keep getting on out there wherever you can to do your thing. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha!
Too right.
Cheers, dude. Thank you very much, man. Really appreciate you coming on, Sam.